Welcome into the Robert Allen and Friends show on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler filling in for Robert the rest of this week, up into through Monday as well. And we're going to start off pretty quickly here today with a guest joining me. I've got Tom Ackerman, who is joining me now, sports director at KMOX Sports in St. Louis. Tom, how's it going?
It's going well. How's it going with you?
Hey man, it's been rolling. You know, we're trying to get as much content as I'm sure you are too out there with the no sports going on really. But I think I think we're close to possibly the most craziest, the most full type of summer coming up with sports, at least major sports. Do you agree with that?
Seems like it. I mean, as long as we can get everything through, I think it's like day to day. I really do. I feel like every day you get a little bit closer. I still am anxious because I just don't know what the next round of positive tests will bring and how you got a lot of people involved. So it's really up to the players to make it happen. And in our world over here, you're looking at baseball and hockey most closely at the moment because they're about to get started. Hockey is going to start on Monday with training camp, and you just hope that they can keep it all together and move forward. But it really is a day-to-day thing. I mean, today is another step. The Cardinals are going to have an inter-squad game at Busch Stadium tonight, and it'll be about 4 innings, and that's a big step, competition, and then go from there. But there's a lot of hurdles ahead. I mean, they're going to have to travel, go to other ballparks, sleep in hotels, travel on airplanes. It's a different world that we're in right now, and we're just trying to, as everybody is in their own profession or situation, just taking it day by day.
Are you or anybody of the media allowed to be in person to view that inter-squad game?
Yes, so I won't be there tonight. I have a show that I'm doing at 5:30 from my house. I do this thing called the Garage Happy Hour where I have guests on from my garage,
Awesome.
And I bring them in via Facebook Live, and David Freese is on the show tonight.
Oh, very cool, very cool.
That's kind of exciting. So I won't be at the ballpark while they're doing their game, but yes, there is access. It's limited, but the media, a certain number of media are allowed in the ballpark in the press level, so they open up the press box. Masks are required, but you can watch from up there. And then all interviews are done via Zoom, so we actually don't get to talk to the players next to them, but you are able to talk to them. And they've actually done a really good job with this room that they've set up downstairs for Zoom calls with the players and with manager Mike Schilt and president of baseball operations John Mozeliak. So they've done a good job of that. There is access, but it's just not the same.
Tom Ackerman joining me here on the Robert Allen and Friends show. KMOX Sports in St. Louis covers the Cardinals, the Blues, all that. Tom, did you ever think when everything was going on this summer and early in the spring too, talking about baseball coming back or not coming back, did you ever think that baseball, the players and the owners would ever come to a real decision?
I had my doubts. I thought that baseball would probably play because they need to keep the brand out there, and they need the TV revenue, and they need the money. I mean, it's a lot of money you'd be missing out on. So I figured they'd probably get it. The commissioner would have to push it through somehow, but the players and owners going back and forth was frustrating to watch. I tried not to get into it on a daily basis because you're just going to be let down. It's like, oh, we're getting baseball? No. Yeah, the players say no, or the owners say no, or there's a disagreement here or there. It became a labor disagreement, and now, that doesn't look promising leading into what is needed, which is a new CBA by 2022. What does next year look like, et cetera? Rob Manfred is a labor lawyer, so he has experience in this, and the players union and the owners went back and forth, and it seemed that there was that it was, it was disorganized and that the communication wasn't always there, and it was hard. So I had my doubts, but I thought that in the end they would probably end up doing something, trying to push something through, because baseball needed to be able to play, and I know that the owners wanted to play. So that got done. I'm happy that something got done, but I still don't know what the future holds.
What did you think about Rob Manfred basically admitting publicly that the league, the owners weren't really ever thinking about playing past 60 games?
Right. I mean, that's exactly why I don't blame the players for being upset and for there being divisiveness here in division. And I just, it was disappointing. I think that the leadership needs to be with baseball's best interests, and when I say baseball, I mean everybody. It should be viewed. I understand the business of it. I get it. But, the baseball family and the baseball world was put on hold for a long time. So to hear something like that was a little disappointing. But then again, I kind of brushed it off anyway because they're already playing. I mean, it's like it was tough to hear. But then again, they had already set a 60-game schedule, and now we're already into this period of getting screening for everybody and moving forward. And there's so many moving parts that at this point, it just comes down to what they're able to accomplish, and can they even get to July 23rd and 24th? That's kind of where my mindset has gone at this point. Like 2020 to me, nothing is really surprising me anymore.
Right.
It just, everything that has happened, I mean, it could all fall apart, or we might get some good news, bad news. It's just been a roller coaster. So I guess what I'm saying is, while it was disappointing, it just wasn't surprising. I just kind of was like, oh, there we go again.
Yeah.
There's been no, it just hasn't been steady. There's been no consistency really anywhere. And I hope that it can stay the course. I hope that they can figure something out and give a lot of hardworking people in the game a chance to make a living, and give fans a chance to enjoy something that they've been waiting a long time for, and very patiently, I might add.
Sure.
And try to keep baseball relevant in a time when baseball has lost some relevance. They might be making a lot of money, but they need to keep themselves in the same breath as the NFL and NBA, which have long since passed them. In terms of popularity and young people getting into them and all of that kind of thing. I'm just I love the game of baseball. I'm not so thrilled about MLB, the way that everything was handled, but I still believe very strongly in the game of baseball as being different than everything else, a game that's beautiful and needs to be shown and taught and promoted and loved, and I hope that all of that happens.
As far as some of those fans, we've talked about this a lot, but as some of those fans that were maybe on the fence a little bit about getting more into baseball, watching baseball, and maybe even some of those that consistently watched it for a long time but have just been so fed up with what's gone on between both sides this whole season, this whole off season. Do you think that there's going to be long-lasting ramifications for a lot of these fans that just, that I'm done with baseball, basically, is the mindset for some of these guys?
I think everybody is different. I think that if you are turned off by the negotiations, I do not blame you whatsoever, because I just said that I was. But it might be something that hooks you back in. It might be a memory, a game that you loved, that you see the highlight again or you hear the call again. Or it might be something that you witness in one of these games or even practices. You see some video of your favorite player making a great catch and you get those juices flowing again. It might be just one little thing that hooks you back in, and that's the hope. And I don't blame people for taking time away from it for a little while, because quite honestly, in 2020, our priorities have shifted. Sports, I think there was a time where your day, you couldn't wait to finish your day because you would go watch the ball game. Well, now, we've spent a lot of time with our families, and if you have kids, you're making dinner for your kids. I have become pretty good on the grill. I mean, my grill game is back. I mean, I've spent a lot of time in the backyard after work. I'm downtown right now, so I still come into the station and work, but in the evenings when I'd be at the ballpark, I'm spending a lot more time around the kids, and I've learned to live without the game, but it won't take me long. Once I hear the call again, I'm going to get those emotions back. Once I see the guys on the field, I'm going to feel it again. That won't happen for everybody, but it'll happen for some. And then for others, it might take a little bit longer, but I do think the game has been through a lot since the 1800s, and this is another part of its history, but it will come back. It will be. It's up to Major League Baseball, I think, to continue to promote it and get it out there to the younger generation, and to make sure that it's inclusive, that everybody can enjoy it, that it embraces diversity, and I'm very positive that they'll be able to do that. But for the casual sports fan who may breeze in or breeze out, just they have to do something that can hook them, and it might take one beautiful catch or great moment or interview or something very real that draws them in. I think there are some really good people in the game of baseball that are great conversationalists, storytellers. Baseball's just different. It's just different than all the other sports. There's a rhythm to it that is different. There's a beauty of it. I think there's the possibility down the road at some point that the fans do come back, and when that happens, what does that look like? And I will still sit here and say that when the time is right, when that day comes, we don't know when that is, when it's safe enough for a ballpark to be full of fans again, it's going to be if you love baseball, it will be one of the most emotional experiences we've ever had here in St. Louis. This is a very baseball-centric area. And when we fill the ballpark again and get the Cardinals back on the field and all the legends are back out there and everything else, it will be extremely emotional. And maybe a casual sports fan sees that and says, you know what, I like that. I have never been a baseball fan, but now that catches my eye, and I think I'd like to watch more of that too. So it really is up to it varies among fans, and it depends on when everything comes back. But little by little, I think baseball will get its fan base back in order. Right now, though, some of those fans feel bruised, and I totally get it. I completely understand that. If
Busch Stadium said tomorrow, hey, we're able to have fans, everybody come in, do you think that place would sell out immediately?
Yeah, immediately. Yeah, I do. I don't. Could they sustain it? That's up to them on how they play, what the team is like. I think that they would. Although right now, logistics and traveling and all that stuff has been restricted. It's a little hard. The Cardinals do draw very well, but they are very much a regional team. They fill the ballpark most of the time, the weekends definitely, because they draw fans from Arkansas and Kentucky and Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, and Oklahoma, and Kansas, and all the surrounding states. So they do well in that regard. But I do think that given some time, the place would be packed and rocking again. I just don't know when that's going to be, and it might be a reflection of if our society feels that it's safe to go back to a ballpark again and participate. The Cardinals do have a plan. They are planning behind the scenes for when fans are allowed back in, what that will look like. They have different phases of reentry that they are working on and planning, but they just don't know when that's going to be.
It's completely understandable. Tom Ackerman joining me here from KMOX Sports in St. Louis on the Robert Allen Friends Show with Patrick Wheeler. With a 60-game season, do you believe, and even for a team like St. Louis where you are, that teams are going to come out and have to hope that they are, basically really good, really fast in order to find a way into the postseason this year?
Yeah, I think that it's anybody's game this year. I think anybody has a chance. In 60 games, you just never know. I mean, the Washington Nationals were 19-31 in the first 50 games last year. The Cardinals typically don't get off to a super hot start. They have in past years, but it's going to take somebody getting off to a great start and sustaining it. 60 games will go by pretty quickly. You're going to have the reason I think the Cardinals have a very good chance and will be very hard to eliminate is the Cardinals are very deep in pitching.
Right.
They have a good rotation anchored by Jack Flaherty, their ace, Dakota Hudson, Adam Wainwright, Miles Michaelis, presumably Carlos Martinez, although he'd be pretty good out of the bullpen. They have a couple of other candidates for fifth starter, including a Korean lefty, Kwon Young Kim, who's been very impressive. And then they have others beyond that. They have probably 9 or 10 pitchers that in theory could end up being in their rotation if they needed it. And they have a very good bullpen, even though they've taken a few hits here injury-wise. They do have, by the time we get to the end of that regular season, they could have a dynamite bullpen. So I think that helps the Cardinals. Plus, they play really good defense, and they are very good at run protection. So they're going to be hard to eliminate. It will all come down to, can the Cardinals hit or not? I mean, the best team in the National League is the Dodgers. They are loaded with talent. But I think you don't have to worry about the Dodgers right now if you're the Cardinals. You have to deal with the NL Central 40 times.
Wow.
And it will be a very tight race. The Cubs are good. The Brewers are always tough. The Reds are very much improved. The Pirates are they're fifth out of the 5. I mean, they're not a great team, but they don't know that. I mean, you want to play the teams that aren't that great late in the year, not early in the year, and in a 60-game season. I mean, a team that they don't know that they're the last place team. They might come out and surprise. You never know. So the AL Central, which the Cardinals will play 20 times, will be tough also. So it's not going to be easy, but I think that it'll be fascinating. And I think the Cardinals are set up really well. It really comes down to, can the Cardinals hit? If their offense improves, they'll be tough to beat. If their offense stalls like it did against the Nationals in the NLCS, they're going to have problems. But I think in their ballpark, the Cardinals will be very tough. I mean, the ballpark sets up well for pitchers. It's a fair ballpark, but I think it leans a little more towards good defense and pitching, and the Cardinals have built their team in that way. So things look good.
With all the rules being put out now, with how this season's supposed to go out, and the little the little rules about you can't lick your fingers and no sunflower seeds, no gum, all that stuff. How much do you think those rules will really be enforced by Major League Baseball this season?
I think that they will be enforced, and I think that the players will be the ones who do it. So if that makes sense. So I think that the umpires will watch, Major League Baseball will watch, but I think that the veteran players, to protect themselves, their families, each other, the great staff, if you want to be here and you want to play, you're going to follow the rules and you will hold your teammates accountable. Adam Wainwright has already said that he and the veteran players on this team got together and they gave a little speech to the rest of the team and said, if you fall out of line, we're going to get after you, and we're going to put you back in line. So I think the players, the veteran players, will police it. The coaching staff might also, but I do think that there will be some cohesiveness there, and if you don't, then it probably means you don't want to be here. So I'm going to assume that if a player has gone to this point to pass through the intake process and the follow protocol, that they are ready to follow the rules. And as Wainwright said, it's only for 3 months. I mean, we're asking for 3 months of your life.
Yep.
For the end of July, August, September, October, to follow these rules so that we can get through a 60-game season and then get everybody back to their families safely, is basically what he said. And I totally get that. So that's what I think. I think that the players will probably police it. It's really going to be up to them, especially on the road. When these guys go on the road and they check into their hotel, that they're not going out to restaurants and bars, that they're staying at the hotel, and they're eating in and that they're being safe and they are preparing for the next game, and then they play their game, they pack their bag, and they go back. And in a 3-month period, it's hard, but it's a routine that they'll get into, and you hope that it goes well. Just cross your fingers, because it will. It'll take a little getting used to. And as Andrew Miller, the Cardinals reliever, and also their player rep said, take a little luck too.
Yeah.
But we'll see what happens.
Tom Ackerman joining me here on the Robert Allen and Friends Show with Patrick Wheeler. Were you surprised to see a name like David Price say that he was not going to play this year?
No, I wasn't, because, even Mike Trout, and Mike has a reason for that because his wife is pregnant. These are all people, they're all human beings, and everybody's different. So you might have reservations about playing because you have at-risk family members or friends or parents or whatever the case may be. David is certainly a big name, but I put all these players on the same level right now. They're all human beings. They're all paid to play a game. Some are paid a lot more than others. But this is a health situation, and it is a lot different. And I would not think less of somebody if they decided to opt out. That's me, and so that's how I viewed it. And so I don't think any differently if it's David Price or Mike Leake or Ian Desmond or Ryan Zimmerman or anybody else, because everyone has different reasons for it. You could be 23 years old and in super shape and feel like you're invincible, but if you have an at-risk family member, it could give you pause. So whoever it is, I think that in 2020, I'm definitely open to anything that happens at this point.
I know baseball has been the domination, the headlines during all this and everything, but in a town like St. Louis, what's the feel of trying to get hockey back? I know the Blues were, they were pretty much still rolling. They had their up and downs like they do every season, but they were still rolling. What was the feel for trying to get them back into play and have a chance to repeat as Stanley Cup champions?
Well, the fact that they are the champs, the fans are excited about them getting a chance to do it again. I think that, they have a team that has, I think they're eager to get back on the ice and play together. I think they have a really solid team. I think that the time off benefits them because Vladimir Tarasenko, now coming off his surgery, can rejoin them, and he is a scary opponent for anybody because he can score from anywhere and at any time. But this team is built on defense and goaltending, and their defense has been really strong. And they have a really good coach, I think, for the moment. Craig Berube is a no-nonsense guy. He will keep them focused, and I think they'll be good. Now, 4 players tested positive. That was a report last week, so they'll have to navigate their way through that. But, the Cardinals had 3 players test positive also, and other teams have had players test positive. So you have to get through that moment in time, but July 13th, training camp starts. August 1st, a tournament starts. I think Blues fans are fired up about that, and I'm certain the organization is. And they would be up in Edmonton in a hub working on trying to bring the cup back to St. Louis. And, we wouldn't have the raucous parade that we had where people were kissing each other and kissing the cup and drinking beer out of the cup with the players, but it'd be a celebration nonetheless. And that's the other thing, is I assure you that any championship won, you hang that banner and you celebrate that just as much as any. I think that if the Cardinals were to win the World Series or the Blues win the Stanley Cup, this is everybody's starting from the same spot. It's a challenge for everybody. It would really be an accomplishment to be able to get through it all and emerge as the champion. So we'll see if they can do that.
Final question here for you. I'm going to take you to another sport because St. Louis, I said it whenever the Battlehawks came into town at the XFL. I felt really proud to see St. Louis, kind of show out the way they did with the fan support as much as they really did. It was impressive. So number one, kind of a two-parter here. How important was it to have football back in St. Louis? But also the second part would be, how much of a gut punch was it when that season got canceled prematurely?
Yeah, it was tough. That was tough to lose it because it was so cool to see everybody back together downtown, tailgating. It was wild. I mean, it was absolutely wild. The weather was great, too, in February when they started the XFL season here. The Battlehawks played 2 games on the road, but then they came home and played an opener. It was just crazy. I mean, the fans were having so much fun, just a huge party, and they didn't know any of the players. I mean, they didn't know anybody. I mean, the lower bowl was completely full. The dome was absolutely rocking. And then they started to get to know these guys a little bit, and it was totally fun. But it was basically just a celebration of St. Louis. And yes, there's definitely that narrative underlying of an NFL team got ripped away from us. So it was showing everybody that football still can thrive in St. Louis and that there are a lot of football fans here. And then, look who's on the schedule, Los Angeles. So
even better.
They decide, the Battlehawks, that they're going to open up the upper level. And for that game, which never happened,
right.
But for that game, they opened up the upper level, started selling tickets, and they started selling like crazy. I mean, they could have ended up with about 50,000 people in the dome on national television for St. Louis against Los Angeles. And the Battlehawks Kurt Hunziker, their president, told me this is not about the Rams or anything like this. I'm out to show that St. Louis is a great football town and a great sports town. But I promise you what the narrative would have been and what America would have seen. And it would have been, that's the one that hurts the most, because that would have been an unbelievable party. And I think that's the one that hurts. So it was brief. It was a short part of our city's history, but people had a lot of fun with it, and it'll always be a story to tell.
Tom, thanks so much for hanging out with me a little bit today. I appreciate it. And, hey, go Cards. I hope they can get everything going on time, and the same with the Blues, and wish you all the best up there with hopefully the upcoming season here.
Hey, thank you very much. I appreciate you reaching out. Always great to talk. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Tom Ackerman. From KMOX in St. Louis, he does a great job. You can follow him on Twitter at Ackerman1120, and really does a great job when it comes to everything St. Louis sports. Cardinals fans around here, Blues fans, whatever you may be. He's been a great ambassador for them on that legendary KMOX station for a long time. When we come back, Cade Cunningham spoke to the media for the first time since the sanctions were handed down from the NCAA. We'll talk about it next on the Robert Allen and Friends Show with Patrick Wheeler. All right, welcome back to Robert Allen and Friends Show here on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler filling in for Robert. Sure he's enjoying his vacation so far. Big shout out, thank you to Tom Ackerman there for joining me to start off the show. Kind of got a little unconventional start to the show there with a quick interview, but he did fantastic as always. Love hearing about perspective from people in big cities with big sports franchises, hearing about how things are going, what's the feel of how normal things might eventually be, and tell you what, it's it's going to be extremely unconventional. I mean, we've learned that. So again, same thing today. If you have questions, you feel free to reach out to me on my social media, and I'll get them answered. Kind of substituting that in for the TPT line that most of the listeners are used to sending messages and questions into Robert. You can find me at Twitter at @ThePattyWheels, or find me on Facebook, Patrick Wheeler. I'll be happy to answer whatever questions you have. Cade Cunningham was able to speak to the media basically for the first time since these sanctions have been handed down regarding the NCAA, regarding the OSU men's basketball program from the NCAA. And there was a lot to take away from it. We're going to talk quite a bit about it. I've got Levi Peckinpah coming on with me in the 12 o'clock hour. He'll talk to me about all that as well and see what he took away from it. And I'm probably going to talk to Aaron Torres about it too, who writes for college basketball, writes about college basketball, college football for Fox Sports, and is a host for them as well. At around 11:25, he actually had Mike Boynton on his latest podcast, and it's a pretty entertaining one. So we'll talk about all that with him too. Regarding what Cade said, I think that to me, his opening statement said a lot, and I'll have it right here. I'm going to play it for everybody in case you missed it, because I think that it kind of detailed everything in terms of what made him return to Oklahoma State, or I should say stay with them. This is what Cade had to say in his opening statement.
So, you want to explore all your options and everything. But after kind of settling down and really looking into everything, at the end of the day, Coach Boynton is who I wanted to play for. It would have been tough for me to, go overseas and go play for a foreign coach or, even the G League or anything. I just hadn't built a connection with anybody like that. So Coach Boynton I already had a great relationship with, and that's what I wanted to play for. Well, the whole team, there's a lot of dudes that are from my area anyway. So, being around those guys I was already used to. And, I wanted to spend the year around people that I'm comfortable with and family.
So really, what sticks out to me from that is I think we all kind of understood the relationship between him and Mike Boynton. I mean, it's been there for a while. The fact that Boynton reached out and actually recruited him without Brad Underwood really even knowing, and that was during Cade's freshman year, high school, where he didn't really expect to be recruited by anybody that early, because there was a couple of other players that were standouts at his school that he figured would get all the attention. But, it's one of those stories where you see a coach who sees something in a player as early as he did, and then that's kind of your recipe for, future success sometimes with those players. So the relationship that he's talking about there, that's still, I think, one of the bigger reasons why he decided to stay with OSU. But on top of that, too, you kind of heard, well, he's comfortable with all these guys. He's played with or known a lot of the guys that are going to be on this team this year already. And the most important relationship to me, again, is him already playing with Isaac Likely. He's been around Ice before. He's played with him on that Olympic team, and now getting a chance to do so on an even bigger stage with OSU. I think that's about as important as it gets with the experience that comes with Isaac Likely. Those two could really feed off each other and make something happen. Well, what else kind of surprised me? I know that this isn't shocking news. We already heard it before, but the other schools that he visited was considering at some point, and in those including Kentucky and North Carolina. Some of those guys, like if you were telling me put the list of schools down to Cade Cunningham, what would he choose? Oklahoma State, North Carolina, Kentucky. Would anybody have originally thought Oklahoma State? No, I don't think so. And I think that a lot of it had to do too. And this is just me talking. I'm not putting words into Cade's mouth, but knowing as much as I do about North Carolina basketball, and they've already got a top point guard coming in there, I think that maybe had something to do with it. But on top of it, I do truly believe that he sees something real special here, and the potential at Oklahoma State is what he sees to be possibly one of the better teams that has been here in a long time. And it's like talked about yesterday. I mean, this definitely is a proving year for Mike Boynton. He's going to have to show that he can get it done. And one of the other important parts of the entire press conference that I took away from Cade was him saying, how important it really was for Boynton to initially and immediately tell him, look, I'm going to help you do what's best for you. If that means going to the G League, if that means going to a different school, I'm going to help you do that. And that was my immediate response when Boynton came out and Holder came out and they talked about what happened with the sanctions. I took that away as extremely, extremely important that was Boynton's first response. Just like Cade said, he doesn't know a lot of coaches that would do that. And I can't really think of a lot that probably would do that either. And I said, Boynton could have easily been like, I want you to stay. Like, please don't leave. This is I have a real shot here at a number one player. You have a real shot to stay with us and we can still do something, so don't leave. But no, it was, look, man, I'm here to help you out. I'm here to put your interest first. And that says a lot to me. And I think it said a lot to Cade. If he was considering anything else, which he talked about in the beginning, that a lot of options were there on the table. Everyone basically reached out. G League was in his ear. I'm sure that other schools were in his ear. But when that comment was immediately made to him and made public by Mike Boynton that I told Cade I'm gonna do what's best for him. I think that changed things. I think it turned him in the right direction for Oklahoma State basketball. And you know what? Other players saw that too, and they got the same response. When said, we're going to make sure we do what's right for our players. Their best interests are our best interests. And that's extremely important. I think about being a 20-year-old kid or younger, hearing that. 18, 19-year-old kid hearing, wow. I met here at a Division I basketball program, and this coach just said he's going to do what's best for me, even if that means me leaving. That's impactful, man. That's big time. That's one of the main things I took away from what Cade said, and that really got him. And I think it would a lot of us, just as human beings. Hearing that, we appreciate that. When we come back, there were some more interesting comments that Cade made in terms of possibly being a one and done. Believe it or not. This was covered on our show on the Afternoon Sports Drive yesterday. Jason and Tom talked about it a little bit, but I gotta give my opinion on it too. When he talked about, will he stay a year or will it be more? I think it definitely raised some eyebrows with his answers. We'll talk about that when we come back here on the Robert Allen Friends Show on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. It's the Robert Allen Friends Show here on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Here on 1020 AM and 1580 AM, 93.1 FM, 105.1 FM, Triple Play Sports Radio app. Get in on the action. You definitely can. Call in 405-533-1020, 405-533-1051. Tell us what's on your mind. I've got Aaron Torres, college basketball, college football writer, coming on at 11:25. Fox Sports Radio as well. He'll be on with us and talk everything OSU. I know he covers a lot of OSU too, so we'll get into that. Levi Peckinpah will be back here in the 12 o'clock hour. Really appreciate him coming on again. I felt for him, man, when he told me, he said, hey, it's been a while, man, since I've been on the mic, and I'm itching to get back on. I said, I feel it. I understand that. When I get him a chance, him and I will talk about everything in that last hour, so make sure you don't miss out. Again, I'm Patrick Wheeler filling in for Robert Allen. Cade Cunningham, as we talked about there before the break, he came out in the media. It was about a 40-minute long Zoom conference style press conference deal. And it went pretty well. I gotta say, I haven't heard a ton of I've seen Cade plenty of times on social media and videos and stuff, but not a lot of 40 minutes basically sitting there and talking about and answering questions the way he did. You know what? He's a pretty straightforward dude. I think he knows about as much as everybody else about what's going on as well. That's kind of the hard part. Is people want to ask Cade, can we get a season going? Are we going to have a season? What do you think? Well, we're going to prepare like we are. We're really going to prepare, and we're all the same way. It's like, well, we're talking like we're going to have one. So I actually really appreciated his transparency, his honesty. It wasn't, well, be honest, man, I just don't think so. But it also wasn't, we're for sure going to have it. It was, we are preparing like we will. And that was important to note. Probably some of the most interesting comments came towards the very end of the Zoom conference, where one of the last questions was talking about his aspirations about heading into the NBA, when he thinks that will be, all this. And I've sat here and preached on this station this entire time, Cade's going to be here for a year. Okay, he just is. He's not going to stay past a year. Some people got their eyebrows raised up yesterday when he comes on and says, you know what, I want to go to the NBA, obviously, but got to do it when it's best for me. He made the point that he wants to last in the NBA, which was, I think, a good point. Everybody wants to do that. But he went on to say, whether that means I'm here for a year at Oklahoma State or 3 years or 4 years, whatever, do what's best for me and get to the NBA when I feel like I should be there. Look, I just don't want expectations to be raised. that he's going to be here more than a year. I don't want people to jump at this and be like, wow, he could really be here for 2, 3, 4 years. No, he's not. I am willing to put that out there and die on that hill that Cade is not going to be here more than a year. People will be like, Patrick, you can't talk for Cade. You don't know what he's thinking. No, I don't know what he's thinking, but I do know that a lot of money awaits him in the NBA. Not to mention the allure of getting to possibly be the first pick in the draft, for crying out loud. Would I be talking a little different if he was a mid-tier player and had a chance later on? Yeah, maybe, but this dude, telling you, people are saying, well, what if he doesn't have such a great year at Oklahoma State and it doesn't turn out to be? That's going to be hard to do. I mean, I think Cade is that talented. And I'm not sure that the Big 12 is also full of talent and more experience. But I'm not sure it's going to really affect Cade in terms of he's going to have a super hard time or even a lot of rough patches in terms of at least production. Scoring for sure. I just don't see it. He could have played in the ACC, the best conference in college basketball, and he could have gone in there and I think he still would have dominated. And I say that with getting a first look at what happened last year when, watching North Carolina, Cole Anthony's supposed to be that guy. He reminds me of Cade Cunningham because they're both kind of the same in terms of top prospect coming into college basketball. Except the difference was that Cole Anthony went to a top program like North Carolina and knew it. That's obvious. But he kind of got his bell rung a little bit. Injuries played a part too, but if Cade can stay healthy and in the Big 12, I just don't see him not having a crazy good year. I mean, full of production. Full of it. And that will result in going to the NBA 1 year later. It just will. So I don't want anybody to think, wow, he really could stay for a while? No. And even if they mentioned, hey, what are your feelings towards, one of the questions, what are your feelings towards possibly not playing in a postseason and all this? Well, I still got to be honest. I think that him coming out and saying, it is what it is, basically, paraphrasing, but basically what he said, it is what it is. If it happens, it happens. If not, we still want to prove we're a good team. Like, I'm honestly really still surprised that it's not more of, man, yeah, that's going to be a huge bummer. Like, that's what I want to do. Like, you did say, obviously, that's what every kid wants to do in college basketball. It's a dream of his and everything like that. But I really expected this whole, no, that's my goal. Coming into it this year is to get straight into the postseason. Bottom line. Get into the NCAA tournament, win the Big 12, get in the Big 12 tournament, and then the NCAA, find ourselves in the Final Four, get to the championship game, whatever. But he understands, and I give him credit for that the NCAA, they are stubborn as anything else, if not worse. And the other organization, all the people are consistently stuck in their ways. And he gets that. He basically said he didn't want to get his hopes up. I don't want to get anybody's hopes up that there might be a chance at a postseason. But I am a little shocked still at it's not really a lack of anything. It's just I figured there would be more of a, I got to go towards a national championship. And some people may be like, well, maybe that means next year he'll want to stay for a second year if the postseason ban is this year and it's not next. No. He's going to the NBA. This dude could get hurt 3 games into the season, and I think he would still go to the NBA. Now, I do still appreciate, basically what he said. Hey, I've loved the coaching staff. I love getting the chance to play for my brother. That's extremely important. And I've been honest about it before. I did not think that even that, when the sanctions came down, was necessarily going to keep Cade around. But it did. And there were talks, he answered, look, I just didn't know if I'd feel comfortable going overseas and playing. Didn't want to play for a foreign coach, basically, is what he said, with possibility of not getting as good of a coaching staff or experience like he would here. Even that with the money that would have come with it. I think that plays into it, though, a little bit as well. I mean, let's be honest, this dude's going to make a lot of money. He knows that. He's going to make a lot of money, barring some catastrophic, career-ending injury. He'll be a rich dude in the NBA. And he threw that into account. You know that he did. And it's just like Jason has brought up to me on our show a lot of times, that I wonder if how much really had to do with getting that chance at a college experience for a year. Which, who even knows how that's going to be? I think it's safe to say that a freshman coming into a university this year, it will be widely different. I mean, number one, you're going to be walking around with a mask on all over campus. Number two, some of your classes are going to be a little bit unconventional compared to what you might be used to. There's not going to be this. There's going to be plenty of changes. Like, think about how in the past, how it has worked out for star athletes on campuses. Said it a few weeks ago now, but athletes, even in college today, they're super, and then the good ones, the really good ones, the ones that stand out, they're superstars. It's like they're already pros. If this were a normal year coming into this season, or normal school year, I should say, for Oklahoma State, like Cade Cunningham, it would be a superstar. People realize this dude is going to be something in the NBA. Oh my gosh, I've got a class with him, or I got a picture with him. And so it's not going to be the same as what it would be. So I think that does take a little bit of the allure from a normal season, a normal school year for Cade Cunningham. But I got to say, I really do appreciate how honest he has been about why he decided to stay. I was never confident that was going to be the case. I was told to be, but I didn't buy into it. Thought he was gone. Thought what I would do in that situation, I would have been gone. Sorry, but I would have. I'm curious what other people would have done. Would they have stayed, having it, knowing there's a shot that there's no postseason, but also knowing that this is a team that could actually get there. Like, this is a team that has what it takes, at least on paper. We haven't seen them all play together yet, but still. Now, we're allowed to make predictions, and it's doable. I think at least, before the season starts now, we can look in and say, wow, going into any game, like, you can have a sense of confidence. It's okay. We've said it, manage your expectations. Yeah, there's people that say, well, don't get too excited. You just never know. We don't know, but it's okay to be thinking, wow, this team could beat anybody. Really. I think that's fair. And that goes back to my point of why this is such a proving year for Mike Boynton. He has a lot riding on this season. And Cade knows that. So a lot of interesting points out of that conference. You can find the entire Zoom conference on Oklahoma State Athletics YouTube page. It's 40 minutes long, but it is intriguing, some of the answers he gives, some of the questions that are sent to him. When we come back in hour number 2, before I get Aaron Torres on at 11:25, there was a report sent out today that apparently, now this was from a legitimate website, I checked it out, but apparently all Big 12 sports, or pardon me, all Big 12 football teams will not have bands or cheerleaders, spirit squads, traveling with them on the road this year. I'm going to talk about that, and I just also received an update about what the ACC now is planning on doing, a Power 5 conference planning on doing with their fall sports schedule. We all know that the Ivy League came out with news. We'll talk about that later on. Got a lot to get here still, get to here on the Robert Allen and Friends Show with Patrick Wheeler here on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Make sure you stay tuned. We'll be back after this.
We are
hour number 2 of the Robert Allen and Friends show here on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler filling in for Robert. Got questions, got comments, feel free to call in 533-1020, 533-1051, 405 area codes. Send me questions on my social media at the Patty Wheels on Twitter, Patrick Wheeler on Facebook. You can send it to the Triple Play Sports Radio page on Facebook as well, and then we'll get those answered. The ACC just announcing, and I love this little tricky headline that was put out. So the tricky headline was ACC delaying start of all fall sports until at least September 1st. So immediately, right, that means football? Well, no. It will affect several sports, including soccer and field hockey, but not football. This is the first Power 5 conference to announce anything like this pushback. The Patriot League has done it, but this is the first Power 5 to do it. Again, though, football, according to this report, will not be affected at the moment, as they plan on still opening up on September 2nd with NC State and Louisville. But we are now are seeing some conferences make decisions regarding fall sports. The Ivy League. The Ivy League was the big news yesterday. As I said on the show yesterday, they were voting later on in the day. I think I put out those two options at the time really were to push things back regarding football and everything in the Ivy League, or to start later. But then they kind of shocked people a little bit with the announcement that they're just not going to have fall sports. Ivy League, no fall sports, including football. FCS, FBS, you can take it how you want. It is obviously, there's some stark differences. A lot more viable regarding finances there. You don't necessarily have to have football to survive there in Ivy League schools. But regardless, for those guys that planned on having a season, I mean, what happens now? Are they going to be able to go somewhere? Will they get assistance from their Ivy League school to go somewhere? Or will these guys just stay on? A lot of them probably have scholarships academically more than anything. Here's the thing, though. I don't, there was already different rules in place with Ivy League schools that happened this year regarding, travel restrictions, all that. So, of course, they like to say, well, we looked at some of these restrictions and rules that were in place at all the schools, and we just don't think we can have a season with these rules in place. But here's the thing. We're going to sit here and act like we can't have a football season in the Ivy League. And the reason would just initially be citing coronavirus, right? That would be the reason. Okay, but we're sitting here on July 9th, and we're making a decision that will affect all these kids pretty heavily. Not just football players, but anybody in fall sports. I think it is a little irrational. I think we're jumping the gun with the idea of canceling the season, even in an FCS school. Like, okay, it's the FCS, but they still have football. It just seems premature. Okay, I saw a very interesting stat today regarding the coronavirus. I love reading up on it, the stats, the new data that comes out every day, and this one was pretty eye-opening. Straight from the CDC, not making this up, straight from the CDC, 142 15 to 24-year-olds have died from the coronavirus. 142. 247 of them, between that age group, have died from pneumonia. Okay? So almost doubling up. Over two times, and we've never shut down a season for pneumonia before. So I think that it's not like Ivy League schools haven't seen this data, right? I mean, they have to see this data. They're not just ignoring it, are they? I think that's a pretty important point. We've been pushing the idea of why kids need to be back in school and and all this, but 15 to 24-year-olds, less than 200, less than 200 have, less than 150 have died from the coronavirus. There's going to be people immediately, oh my gosh, he doesn't care. He doesn't care about deaths. Look, I do. No one should have to die from this, and it sucks that anybody does. But those numbers are important. If we're going to cite the coronavirus for being the reason to shut down an entire fall sports season, we got to look at stuff like that. You know, I mean, does every player there agree that, yeah, we shouldn't have a season? Every player in the Ivy League, they're okay with that? I doubt it. I wouldn't be. One of the main responses I've seen, and we've discussed a ton, is, well, what about the teachers on these campuses? What about the older coaches? Look, for teachers, can't they teach from home? I mean, didn't that happen this year already? If they are more susceptible, can they not remote teach? And those that don't want to be there don't have to be there, right? Like teachers, they don't have to be there. Students don't have to be there if they don't want to. So you definitely want to put precautions in place. You want to have new rules and guidelines available. But I just don't like the idea that we have to act like it's just not doable. Because regardless of what some people may tell you, what you're reading, we are learning to live with this virus. We are. Just like anything else. Where we're learning how to adapt with it. Now, it's taken maybe a little bit more time than some people might have wanted to happen. But guess what? This was brand new. No idea what was going on, so it's going to take some time. But I think that we're jumping the gun on things like this. Just like a lot of people have with a lot of things regarding this disease. Let's go to the phone lines. You're on the Robert Allen and Friends show with Patrick Wheeler. Go ahead.
Yes, Patrick. I have two items.
Okay.
Questions, as it were. Number one, with the announcement yesterday that Stanford is dropping 11 sports, and the one key to me is wrestling, and they had like 3 All-Americans last year, and all are underclassmen. So, of course, I immediately think, is it possible we could gather those guys, or 1 or 2 of them if it fit into our their weight classes, because they've got years left. They're allowed to. Their statement from Stanford said they were allowed. These sports are allowed to compete. They will fund them through their 2021 seasons if COVID allows it. But after that, the program is gone. So that's number one question. Do you know anything if we would be interested in those guys? And number two, I was reading a Yahoo sports list. I don't know how old this is, but it was listing the top, in their opinion, the top 20 football coaches in the nation. And I found it interesting that Coach Gundy comes in the Big 12 at number 5. So out of 10 teams, he's right in the middle. I was kind of surprised that he was that low. But anyway, I don't know if you saw that list, but those are the 2 things I wanted to ask this morning.
Okay.
And I'll hang up and listen.
Yeah, thanks for the call. Appreciate it. First with Stanford, I hadn't got to that yet, but cutting 11 varsity sports, one of them being wrestling. They had 36 varsity sports at Stanford. That is a very, very large number. Most schools have 18 to 20 or something like that. That's pretty substantial compared to everything else. And wrestling probably being the most notable of sports that was cut. I have to think, like the caller asked, if Oklahoma State has availability and the ability to go after these guys, which they do, in terms of, at least from Stanford's standpoint, they have said that they will, just like the caller said, honor those scholarships, but also will assist these student athletes in terms of getting out of there if they want to. So I would say that it's certainly possible. would we be surprised to hear that Oklahoma State was in the year? Some of these guys, no. Especially if they're as good as advertised, as good as some of these programs like Oklahoma State. I mean, we know the standard that's held here. You got to have seriously good athletes to make that wrestling team. But I think it's definitely possible. They're going to go somewhere. It's just like we saw with Wisconsin. I think did the same thing. Or no, it was a different school. I'm drawing a blank now on it, but one of the other schools that cut sports, maybe it was UConn or Cincinnati. It was one of those two that did the same thing and said we're gonna send our soccer players other places and help them out if they want to go. So yeah, it's definitely possible. The list he was talking about on Yahoo with the top coaches in the Big 12 said he had Mike Gundy at number 5, I think he said. Look, here's the thing with Big 12 coaches. I mean, you could go anywhere and search up a Big 12 coaching list, and you will find different answers everywhere you go, except for number 1. That's just the truth. Lincoln Riley will top the list every single time, and that's understandable. But you can have Gary Patterson at 2 sometimes. Some people might have Mike Gundy at 2. I think Matt Campbell deserves serious recognition with Iowa State. But Gundy being at 5 on Yahoo Sports, yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I think, who are you going to put in front of him? Just like I said, Gary Patterson. Are you going to put Matt Campbell in front of him? Are you going to even put Tom Herman in front of him at Texas? I don't really know the vendetta, and I don't want to say that Yahoo Sports has a vendetta against Mike Gundy, but you do. I'm sure we all remember that story that came out when all this was happening about Mike Gundy that was written on Yahoo Sports. It was, I think, designed to be more of an actual factual story, but let me tell you, it was pretty darn opinionated. And it depends on what they cite it for. I mean, why do they have a number 5? But this year, you can go on any list, and I think you could find him more in the top 3. And that's probably where I'd have him. Honestly, I'd probably put him at 3. I think Matt Campbell might be a serious threat at that spot, but for me, I mean, I'm not hugely against him at 5, but I could see him at 4 or 3 more than I would at 5. Now, if anyone has him past 5, okay. I mean, don't know what kind of information would back that up. But, I go on a list here. Look, I'm looking at one right now that I just happened to look up. I like, there's a bunch, like I said, a bunch of different ones, different sites. Athlon, they decided to put Les Miles at 8 with Kansas. They decided to put him in front of Dave Aranda, which is, that's understandable, new coach at Baylor. But Matt Wells at Texas Tech, probably push him ahead of Les Miles. So you could go on any list and be like, that's just incorrect. So if I had to choose, I'm not going to cry a river that he's sitting at 5 at Yahoo Sports, but I would probably push him to 3 or 4 based on what he's been able to do. Also based on the team he has coming in, okay? Now, I do like to consider that I think there will be plenty of hurdles this year, simply from an off-the-field standpoint. We've talked about that over and over. I'm really curious as to how Mike is going to rally this team and be able to coach his way. Or, quite frankly, like a lot of coaches want to coach. Because I really do think there's so much of an idea that, I've got to be, at least you would think for Mike Gundy, I've got to be not just on my best behavior, but making sure I'm towing the line. Which, think of a lot of coaches that have to toe a line when it comes to their players. But I think this is the case this year. That will be the question. Can he adapt to that style of coaching that might have to change a little bit, at least behind closed doors? And if players say what they continue to say now, which is, hey, we're good, we're focused, we're planning on going out there and having a good season and playing for our coach, but words can only travel so far. We're going to see. And I'm telling you, just get ready for when this season does begin, which I'm still confident it will at some point. We're going to see and it's going to be extremely annoying, okay? But we're going to see immediate response of, how will Mike Gundy and Chuba Hubbard do together this year? How will the offseason affect what goes on in the playing field? Man, that's going to get old. And after every single game. Oh my God, Chuba Hubbard only ran for 89 yards and only caught 2 passes out of the backfield. Oh my, the Mike Gundy and Chuba Hubbard must not be on the same page. Just kind of giving you a precursor to what's going to happen with the questions floated by the media this year that love to stir the pot. But what will impress me with Mike Gundy is if he comes out. Now, we all know this non-conference schedule should be a cakewalk if it remains the same that it is right now. It should be a cakewalk. Say he just dominates in those games. Let's say we get into the Big 12 games and it just starts going off without a hitch. We're just dominating. We're living up to some of the hype. If that can happen consistently this year, which if that does happen, what you're going to see is the questions will still flow, like I just said, to Chuba, to every other player, to Mike Gundy. But the answers will be, hey, look, we're focused, man. Our coach is leading us right now. We are succeeding because of him. That's going to be the answers. So if Mike can get them in that position, with everything that's gone on, I'm going to be impressed, because I've detailed it out that I don't really know how he's going to tiptoe around his normal coaching style. And it's just human behavior to expect that, to think in the back of your mind, like, I just got to make sure that I do, what's right, but at the same time, I got to make sure that I am aware of everything I do and say. And try to couple that with being a Division I football coach with every other responsibility that comes along, and being a coach at the same time. That's not going to be easy. I mean, it just isn't. You don't want to have that. Now, people can argue, well, that's his own fault or whatever. But it's I think it goes both ways. I really do. And I told a lot of people when all this happened that this was a teaching point for a lot of universities. There were a lot of eyes on what happened with Oklahoma State football. And there were coaches that said, and probably ADs that got to their players and said, hey, look, if you guys have an issue, if you have an issue with what I wear or what I say or do or not do, you got to come to me. Because look what happens if you don't. or maybe they even said, hey, if you guys feel like I am not connected enough with you as players, as a coach here, please let me know so we can avoid what happened at Oklahoma State. This was a teaching opportunity for a lot of coaches. A lot. Especially in the Big 12. I mean, they're looking at Oklahoma State and saying, look what happened. Like, let's avoid that. If we got issues, let's take care of it in-house, because look what happened. That's all they got to say. So yeah, it's gonna be a tiptoeing type of season for Mike Gundy. But if he can find success, and with this team, it's very possible, then give him all the credit in the world, because he deserves it. All right, when we come back, Aaron Torres is going to join me. We'll talk, I'm sure, more about this subject. He writes for college football, writes about college football, college basketball, and is a host with Fox Sports Radio. I'm really interested to ask him about how that podcast went with Mike Boynton that he had on his podcast not too long ago. It's pretty entertaining. I've listened to it and see what he has to say about all that. Still to come here on the Robert Allen and Friends Show with Patrick Wheeler on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Hey, welcome back. It's the Robert Allen and Friends Show, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler covering in for Robert. Holding it down for him here. Get in on the action if you want, guys. 533-1020, 533-1051, 405 area codes, and we'll talk whatever. Aaron Torres, pushing back to about 10 minutes from now. That was my bad. Kind of a late reminder there for him, but we'll get him on shortly. Before that, it was interesting. I was talking about the Ivy League. They've officially canceled that fall football season, the fall sports season. Actually, I guess canceled isn't the right word. They just, at least for now, there hasn't been a response to will they maybe push it to the spring, but I doubt it. I'm gonna say that this is probably for good. Another thing I found interesting, it seems like all of a sudden everything we're doing is now canceling again or pushing things back or not having this or that, which that's not the direction we want to go in. We'll talk about what I'm talking about here in just a second. Let's go to the phone lines first. You're on the Robert Allen and Friends Show with Patrick Wheeler. Go ahead.
Hey, Patrick, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Oh, good. Hey, I got a quick question.
Sure.
And I'm sure I'm not the only person to think about that, but if they push football to the spring, and you're a senior or a draft eligible person, so you could be playing like 25 games in a calendar year. I mean, doesn't the safety issue of just putting that wear on your body I mean, I can't be the only person to think pushing it to the spring is just, that's not a really great idea for, most of these, like Chuba or Tylen or any really senior or draft eligible junior.
Yeah, no doubt. One of the things that I've said about pushing it to a spring season, and I said this before on the Afternoon Sports Drive, was injuries like for that would be a huge factor. I mean, it's a contact sport like that is not supposed to be played back to back as quickly as it would. On top of that, star players, and I said Chuba, Tylen here at Oklahoma State, you name a ton of star players in college football this year, they won't play if a spring season comes around. They just won't.
They will not play if it gets to spring.
No, and training for the combine and all that starts for players in January. And you're telling me that they're gonna put that aside and try to play? No, they're not gonna play, and especially a condensed season. It's just not gonna happen that way.
Yeah. Well, what I've talked to Robert a few times about this, but I'm trying not to be pessimistic. But the only way I see us even playing is just gonna be a conference schedule. I can't see, because they got to leave weeks open and everything else. If we get to play a conference schedule, I mean, we should be happier than all get out just to do that. Really, I really don't see a way, because you can't bubble these guys. You can't do what the NBA, there's, in the testing. I'd hate to see how much OSU or any major university is paying for testing right now. I mean, and that's with what we have on campus.
Yeah, that's definitely a fair assessment. I mean, I think it's becoming more real to a lot of places that a conference only schedule might be a reality this season.
Right. So yeah, I was just kind of wondering about that. But yeah, every time they talk about spring and everything, it just drives me crazy, because there's no real way that that would even actually be able to work.
Right, yeah, I think it's very, very unlikely to be feasible at all.
Right, yeah, that's true. So, all right, well, Patrick, have a good day.
You too, I appreciate the phone call. Yeah, it's that's the last thing on a lot of these AD's minds and schools' minds, I think, is to try to get into a spring season. I'm sure our next guest here, Aaron Torres, is joining me now. Writes college football, writes about college basketball, and Fox Sports host. I think that he might agree. Well, I guess I'm going to kind of force this right into you here, Aaron, with this question. So we were talking about that. Thanks for joining me, first of all. But to you, does a spring college football season make sense at all? Hey, Aaron, can you hear me? All right, we'll have to get him on here in a second. Try to do that in just a minute here. No, but that's what I'm gonna be curious to ask him. Is like, I've cited that so many times. It's just like, what? You know, I said that a spring season, when I heard like Lincoln Riley, for instance, saying, "Hey, that makes sense." Like, dude, no, it doesn't. Like, I cited the reasons, and a bunch of people that have brought up too. Who's to say the coronavirus isn't going to be better by then? What's this whole idea that in the spring it's just going to be better? That's also interesting to think about. All right, I think Aaron's with us now. Aaron, you with me?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, hey man, we got you. Thanks for calling back. I appreciate it. Yes, we can.
Hopefully, it's okay. I didn't know what was going to come first, the actual start of the college football season or actually being able to hear me. I mean, neither was both were on tenuous ground there for a second. But, Patrick, man, I listened to your segment while I was coming in.
Yep.
And answer the question he asked me about spring football. No, it doesn't make sense. And it doesn't make sense on so many levels. I think the one that I think the fans care about the most is the one that you guys brought up, which is that it's not fair to anybody with a real NFL future, and those guys probably won't play. But it's also not fair to the freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors that are going to have to play an 8, 9, 10 game season. What are they going to end, the playoff on April 15th and then have them report back for camp on June 1st? I mean, it's just not realistic. And so, there are a lot of contingency plans for this season. I would say outside of canceling the season altogether, the spring football is the one that seems least likely. And certainly, I haven't talked to anybody in college sports that wants it or prefers it, except, of course, the Ivy League. But I don't think we can really compare to the Ivy League to the big boy college football, the Big 12, Pac-12, SEC, et cetera.
Well, like when Lincoln Riley said the other day, that quote, it's doable. Were you surprised to hear him say that?
Well, and you guys would know this better because you're in that market,
yeah.
But it seems like Lincoln Riley has been probably the most, I would say, outspokenly cautious of all the major coaches, I think, in both football and basketball. And I don't know if that's good or bad. He's allowed his opinion like everybody else, but it is a stark, comparison to, say, a Dabo Sweeney, say a Mike Gundy, say a Dan Mullen, who have all been very vocal about, we got to get these kids back on campus and get ready for the season ahead. So, was I surprised by it? If it had come from someone other than Lincoln Riley, probably not, or probably yes. But with him, he's just, he's taking a different approach. And again, it's not to say one side is right or one side is wrong. I think we all want health and safety to come first. We're just taking kind of different approaches to it. I don't think I was totally surprised by that, but I think even Lincoln Riley in his heart of hearts is really hoping we figure out a way to get this thing rolling at the very least the middle of September, end of September, if not, late August, early September, which is obviously the traditional schedule.
Aaron Torres joining me here on the Robert Allen Friends Show from Fox Sports Radio. I cannot believe all the talk about it now. This kind of seems like it's gained speed a little bit and steam. I just don't understand it. But with football, do you see, especially in Power 5 conferences, the opportunity to have some fans in the stands around this year?
I do. Listen, I think that, first of all, some sports are kind of acclimating fans back in. And I think when you're talking about an open-air stadium, I think most ADs publicly that have talked about it have talked about 25 to 50% capacity. I do think it's doable. I really do. And I do think, listen, there is going to be some inherent risk, but I think the fans understand that, and I think it's perfectly acceptable if you're a 30-year Oklahoma State season ticket holder to just say, I'm going to sit this one out, I'm going to watch the games from home, and I don't feel comfortable doing this. I think it's also perfectly fair to say, hey, I've looked at the data, I've looked at the statistics, I'm in my 40s, My parents are healthy, or maybe my parents live, 3,000 miles away and I don't even see them, and I want to go to games. And so I do think it's feasible. I do think, much like the season itself, schools will try to figure out ways to get some fans into the stadiums. And I think the reality of it is, I think, much like this entire season in college football, I think it could look a lot different from state to state, school to school, region to region. I mean, I think there's a possibility you can turn on a game on a Saturday on ESPN and have one stadium at 50% capacity and then flip over to ESPN2, same sport, different region of the country with 0 fans in the stands. I just think, I think I've been saying this from the beginning, and I think more people are kind of wrapping their head around it, is I just think we have to be ready for the unprecedented in college football this year, whether it is 50% capacity, 25% capacity, games getting moved up, games getting pushed back, games getting postponed, and just be ready for the unprecedented. But I do think, anybody that's listening to this show, we just want to figure out a way to get football on the field, and I am still relatively optimistic that happens in some way, shape, or form this fall.
Fair enough. I can see that. In terms of everything we've been talking about it like crazy, obviously, with everything that's gone on with Oklahoma State football in this offseason, do you see any type of dysfunction amongst this team coming into this year with what happened with Mike Gundy and Chuba Hubbard?
No, I really don't, man. I really don't. And I think we in the media, we're on social media because it's our job, and we kind of have to be monitoring what's going on in the broader world. But I think, I think some positives came out of that. I think Mike Gundy realized that maybe he had lost the pulse of the locker room a little bit. I thought it was a really cool moment for Chuba Hubbard, too, to say, that I probably shouldn't have aired this publicly. I probably acted a little bit too emotionally. But listen, man, I've been covering this stuff for so long. Every offseason, there's weird stuff. This year, the offseason's been longer. Guys have been away from campus. They have more time like we all do. I think there's more weird stuff that pops up. But, man, I've seen so many of these. Oh, there's no way this team is going to recover. There's no way this and there's no way that. And then the season starts and you get into the routine of practice and games. And assuming we have that, no, I don't think it's going to impact the football team all that much. I think Mike Gundy's learned his lessons, but I think at the end of the day, those guys are in school to get an education, but also to play football, and they want to be on the field. And I think Mike Gundy, wants the routine of that locker room and of game week and all that stuff. So I don't buy these narratives, man. It's like, we in the media, we get so caught up on one tweet or one this or one that. I think we're all grown-ups at the end of the day, and when you get away from that screen, when you get away from that telephone, I think everyone kind of puts their differences aside and focuses on the task at hand, which is obviously football.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely correct. Aaron Torres joining me here on the Robert Allen and Friends show. Did you get a chance to watch some of the Cade Cunningham press conference yesterday?
Oh, no, I did not. Anything good come out of it?
Yeah, I mean, he, the initial response to the opener was, look, I chose Oklahoma State because of, obviously Coach Mike Boynton and all that, and loves the relationships he already has with the players too. I know that you had Mike Boynton on your podcast not too long ago, but how important do you think it is for instance, the praise that Mike Boynton has gotten, not only with the way that he's handled the situation with the sanctions brought down to Oklahoma State, but it just seems like the relationships that he's been able to build with his guys coming into this season is just through the roof, extremely positive.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%, man, and I think Mike Boynton has really handled this about as well as any coach could. And, I just give him so much credit because when I talked to him, two things really stood out. Is one, he wasn't going to hold back any individual player from making what they believed was the best decision for them. I'll tell you a funny story, and I think I said this on my podcast, but, I was told that behind the scenes, Isaac Likely basically wanted to reaffirm his commitment to Oklahoma State that day. Wow. That the sanctions came out. And Coach Boynton even said, dude, take your time. You don't have to make this announcement today. I really want you to consider all your options and not get caught up in the emotion of the moment. And like a lot of the guys wanted to announce that day or that the following week or whatever it was. And he kind of said, like, no, take your time, do this right. And so that was one thing that stood out for me. And then the other thing that really stood out was last season, obviously, you guys know there were injuries, and Isaac Likely was out with mono, and he never made an excuse. I mean, they played really well when they had the full roster on the court and healthy. They didn't play well. Obviously, when you lose your best players, you're not going to be the same team. And he never made that excuse. He never said, well, if we had Isaac healthy all year, we could have been this or da-da-da, this and that. So I have just been so impressed by him and how he has handled this. And then, as you said, Patrick, it just speaks to the relationships that he's built with the guys in that locker room because, like I said, they all had a lot of really good options outside of Oklahoma State, but outside of one or two guys, it felt like they all really were happy where they were, happy with Mike Boynton and the staff.
Yeah, kind of piggybacking off that for you here. Does originally, were you when the sanctions were handed down? Did you think that Cade would come back to Oklahoma State, or was he going to go to the G League overseas or to a different school?
Well, I'll be honest. In that moment, I did think he was going to choose a professional path because, and look, what I would say is that. And I hate to say it as somebody who loves college sports, but especially on the basketball side and even on the football side to a degree too. With the basketball side, I'd love to sit here and say that all these kids grow up. These are really elite players, that they really grow up, dreaming of playing in the NCAA tournament and taking their school to the Final Four or whatever. That's not really the case. That's not really the truth. The reality is most of them, choose a college which is going to best prepare them for the NBA. Many of them know they're only going to be there 1 year, and we've seen it with Anthony Edwards and Ben Simmons. If you don't make the NCAA tournament, whatever, you just move on to that professional career. And so, the idea that he would come back without the carrot of the NCAA tournament, I didn't really know what to expect, right? Because the NCAA tournament isn't the be-all, end-all for the elite player, but it is still a great stage, and it is still this, and it is still that. And so I really was questioning why wouldn't he pursue a professional option? Why wouldn't he pursue the opportunity to make a lot of money? But I think at the end of the day, assuming that college basketball is played, a couple things is, one, there's the whole relationship stuff, this, that, the other thing. But two, college basketball is also a great stage. And the G League is, you get a paycheck, but as I kind of call people more and more in basketball, I think a lot of them kind of understand, is it worth taking $500,000 when you lose that stage of college basketball and when you potentially could hurt your draft stock by lack of exposure, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm just getting long-winded. I'm sorry. I just finished up at the gym getting a workout in, so my mind is like a million miles an hour. I'm all over the place here. I guess I'll just answer your question by saying when I first heard the news, I didn't think he would play college basketball, but I think like everybody else, when cooler heads prevailed, myself certainly included, and I kind of saw the options. I saw that, who knows if you're going to be able to travel internationally. Was that a realistic option? I thought it'd be more and more likely, but to see him actually come is just really awesome, and I think Oklahoma State fans are really going to enjoy watching him play.
Aaron Torres joining me here on the Robert Allen and Friends Show with Patrick Wheeler. One of the things that he said in the press conference that at least raised some eyebrows for some people was, look, if I want to get to the NBA, but I also want to last in the NBA. So if that means, it's best for me to stay 1 year or 3 years or whatever. I immediately was like to everyone here on the show, hey, look, let's be realistic. I mean, do you really see him actually, for any reason, staying more than 1 year at Oklahoma State?
No. I was trying to think of a punny analogy of there's a better likelihood that this happens than that happens. Nothing immediately came to me. Mike Gundy, you'll see Mike Gundy with a buzz cut in week 1 before you see Cade Cunningham staying an extra year. But I will say, man, I give him and his family so much credit. There are so many, and I love hoops, but there are so many families that they can't see the forest through the trees. And everything is about now. And it is refreshing to see a family like his, and there's plenty of other families too. I got to know this kid at Kentucky who's going to Kentucky next year named BJ Boston, who's a top 5 recruit, who said the exact same thing to me. It's so refreshing to see people see the bigger picture. And, it's so fascinating now to cover college basketball. Everybody wants to get out as soon as they can. But if you look at the guys who stick in the NBA, sure, there's a LeBron James that's a once-in-a-generation talent, a Kevin Durant, whatever. But Steph Curry stayed 3 years of college basketball. Russell Westbrook stayed 2. James Harden stayed 2. Klay Thompson stayed 3. Damian Lillard stayed 4. And there's just a really good track record of not rushing the process, going when you're ready, and like Cade said, going when you're ready to make an impact and compete and help a team win. Because I do think that the one thing that really more so even in basketball than football, these kids don't realize, it really is a business. And you could be the flavor of the month today, and in 6 months from now, the team could have already moved on from you. And so what Cade said is 100% right. When you get there, you want to make sure that you're able to stay, that you're able to have a successful, long career. The first contract isn't the one that changes your family's life. It's your second contract. And, the one thing I'll say about Cade really quick, every time I've been around him, so impressive, so mature, and it seems like it's showing off there in Stillwater, both him and his family.
Yeah, I'd completely agree with that after watching that press conference last night. Okay, last thing here for you real quick. It's kind of a double parter here, but I got to get your picks, sort of your expectations for Oklahoma State football. And let's say we have a normal season, Oklahoma State football and OSU basketball, with the expectations with them, where they might finish.
Yeah. I would say with football, I understand what the excitement's about. And like I said a minute ago, I don't believe that what happened in the offseason is going to have any impact once the season starts. And I understand the excitement around the program. I really do, with all the guys that are coming back off of last year's team. With the schedule, obviously I know you play at Oklahoma State, but the schedule is manageable, at Oklahoma, but the schedule is certainly manageable in the out-of-conference, and I think the team's going to be really good. It's hard for me to pick against Oklahoma in the Big 12 because of the success that Lincoln Riley has had, but, I will say, in a season where, a lot of teams either didn't have spring practice or minimal spring practice, obviously summer workouts have been pushed back. If there's ever a year you're going to get Oklahoma, this year with the redshirt freshman at quarterback, Spencer Rattler, I think this is the year that you can probably get them, although in theory, obviously, Alex Grinch's defense will be a year more developed, whatever. The point I'm saying is it's hard for me to pick against Oklahoma, but I do see where the buzz is with Oklahoma State. And I'll say this, I think if you're talking about a team that can, in fact, knock off Oklahoma, I do think it's probably Oklahoma State in the Big 12.
Okay.
And then as far as basketball, I'll say this, man, the Big 12 basketball is so tough, and it could be really, really good this year. I really like Texas Tech's personnel. Baylor has a chance to essentially return everyone depending on how the draft goes. Kansas is always going to be good. West Virginia is always going to be tough. So I say all that to say with Oklahoma State basketball, I think if there's an NCAA tournament period, and then obviously if they can figure out a way to get eligible, I do in fact think there'll be an NCAA tournament team. I think they'll probably finish 4th, 5th, 6th in the Big 12, which is no shame because that's a really good basketball league. But, yeah, I'm optimistic on both teams. And certainly, man, I really do hope Oklahoma State basketball gets that stage in the NCAA tournament to show everybody what they're capable of because I think they could do real damage if they get there.
He's on Twitter at Aaron_Torres. You can find his podcast where you listen to podcasts, the Aaron Torres podcast. I know the one's still up there with Mike Boyden. Definitely worth a listen. Aaron, thanks so much for hanging out with me a little bit today, man. And here's to hoping we have a normal college football season and basketball for that matter.
I am right there with you, man. Have a good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
All right, thanks. That's Aaron Torres, Fox Sports Radio host and writes about college football, college basketball. Extremely knowledgeable, as you can tell there. We'll be right back with a short segment before we get to the final hour of the show. Levi Peckinpah will join me. That's next.
Robert could always use more friends.
Levi Peckinpah's joining me. I was pushing it there with Aaron. We could have gone on for an hour with what he was talking about. So we got a really short segment before the 12 o'clock hour, but thanks for coming on again, man. Appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. I love coming on.
Yeah,
man.
I know. That's what I said earlier on. I was like, I was actually really happy to give Levi a chance to get back on the mic. And yesterday you produced, right, our show at the Afternoon Sports Drive?
Oh, yeah. Okay. I was on for the Afternoon Sports Drive and for Where Are They Now? That was a great interview.
Awesome. So you had a lot going on here yesterday.
Yepper. Great interview between Tom and Melvin Gilliam. It was great interview.
Yeah, it really was. I got a chance to listen to most of it, and it's definitely something I think we'll try to replay at some point because it was very good. Tom knocks him out of the park with those, doesn't he, on the Where Are They Now?
Oh, yeah. It's just gold every time Tom touches the mic. That's just how it works sometimes.
Oh, man. Don't tell him that, man. He doesn't need to.
I mean, he thinks that anyway, so...
You're right. Can the head get much bigger for Tom?
Not much.
Yeah, he knows that I'll tell him that, too. Hey, man, real quick, this is interesting. I haven't seen and you'll know a little bit more about this and how it feels, but it was a report that came out from Lubbock Online. So it's a real journal that covers Texas Tech and Lubbock and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And they come out and say, well, Texas Tech told they said to the people that had season tickets, look, single season tickets are going to be put on hold for now. Okay, so we're not going to sell those for now. We just don't know what's going to happen with that. Then they said that kind of broke the news. According to all Big 12 teams, all Big 12 schools have agreed. No bands and no cheerleaders on road games. Yeah. Okay. So how impactful do you think that could ultimately be for? Think of Oklahoma State. They bring the band everywhere, right?
Oh yeah, it's always traveling. Yeah. I mean, that's for almost every school. You literally go over. I mean, whenever you go to Boone Pickens State, there's usually that small little section for the opposing team, and you can usually see that band just piped up right there. And that if there's no fans, that's the one thing that's there is that band. Uh-huh. But it's going to be interesting because now, even if say the University of Oklahoma is up there, of course, the University of Oklahoma is going to take over a lot more than just that one section. But with no band there's no one to help, I guess, change the momentum, because usually that band is what also incites a lot of the energy in the arena to shift. So there's going to be a weird tonal change now because there won't be able to be anybody else that can help pipe up the energy of the crowd and the opposing team. Well, that's also kind of good for, I guess you could say, the home teams, because now you don't have to deal with anybody trying to help shift the momentum besides the game, all the team and the team's momentum that they're actually trying to produce on the field instead of everybody in the crowd.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I remember the Tom Herman quote where he's like, a couple of years ago, said to the band, you guys help us win and lose football games. I was like, that's pretty strong, but I believe there's a case to make with that, right?
Remember how yesterday we were talking about the 12th man? They're the extreme audible version of the 12th man. Sure. They're the part of it that helps pipe in and gets the crowd going.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's been times where I've been watching a college football game, and we all know when a certain song is coming, and it's every down. Mm-hmm. And there's times where I'm like, okay, we get it, but also I'm like, wow, that is so actually impactful just through a TV screen.
Right.
And being at a few games too, it's like, that does make a difference. So I get it. It's strange. I think that it would be obviously much more of a difference for the bands compared to the cheerleaders. I mean, I feel bad for them because they should get a chance to do their thing, but much more of an impact will come from no bands. That's going to be something different. As we've heard from so far, Power 5 conferences, they're going to try to find a way to get as many band members into games as possible, because it does make a difference, and especially if fans are limited, you got to have some noise, right?
Yeah, you got to have something to be piped in there, so that way when the University of Oklahoma has a -2 when they have a 2-yard loss, you still hear Boomer Sooner no matter what.
Yes, that is absolutely correct. When we come back for hour number 3, I'm going to ask Levi what he thought about Kate Cunningham's comments yesterday. There was a lot of interesting points made there. We'll get into the Stanford stuff as well, again, as that caller kind of brought up earlier. 11 sports cut. That's out of 36 total. There was a lot there to begin with, but 11 cut. We'll get to that and much more still to come here on the Robert Allen and Friends Show with Patrick Wheeler next. Welcome back, Robert Allen and Friends Show on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler filling in for Robert. We've had a packed show, and it's continuing to stay packed with Levi Peckinpah joining me now on the 12 o'clock hour. Levi, man, we have only been talking for a little bit here, but we could have filled the show with everything we just talked about between breaks, man. A lot of good stuff going on in the sports world, a lot of news. But we're starting with Oklahoma State. I sat down and watched about pretty much the whole 40-minute press conference that I could with Cade yesterday, and I said it too. We've already talked about it a little bit, but I want to get your thoughts on it. The first thing I thought was on his opening statement. It said a lot. They asked him, well, why'd you want to come back? And he cited, obviously, Boynton, but also the relationships he's already got with most of the players on that team. Like, there's a good chunk of players on that team that he's either known before or played with before. And to me, the biggest one that stood out was just how much, like we've talked, been this story, this narrative, who's going to run the team? Isaac or Cade. But we haven't really talked about how they've already played together, and they, according to him, seem to just be about as good of a 1-2 punch as maybe you'll see next year.
Oh yeah, think about it. Before all of this has happened, and Cade now back the interview, they played together at Team USA. They played together and had a lot of time together.
In competitive ball, right?
Exactly. Going up against a lot of competition overseas. So they know how both of them work. And, of course, Isaac likely has gotten better over this past season. And you obviously know that Cade has been able to put in some work during his high school time. So going into the season and going into the Big 12, it's going to be very fun to see how those guys mesh. And because I think a lot of people want to see some type of conflict, just because as humans, we like to see conflict.
It's true.
We like it when things are a little bit tougher than they actually seem. But what's most likely going to happen is they're going to get along pretty well. I mean, because think about it. Both of them are extremely talented guys. And, of course, number one pick in the upcoming draft, most likely Cade Cunningham's going to be. And then Isaac likely is going to try to get his own spot in the NBA draft somewhere also. These guys are extremely talented. They're not selfish or any of those type of things, especially when you're in Mike Boynton's system, where it seems in the majority of the time it's kind of like family instead of where it's just like some people could be selfish and try to think this is all about themselves. No, this is a team effort. In basketball and in any other sport, it's supposed to be a team effort. So especially in these type of scenarios where you're in the Big 12, it's a dog-eat-dog world in the Big 12. If you're selfish and you're complacent and you're just going to continue to be like that and have that type of mindset, the Big 12 will chew you up and spit you out and leave you at the bottom of the standings. These guys know that they can't have that type of mindset, because if they do, you're going to have everybody in the Big 12 looking at you like you're lunch meat. And so these guys are going to get together. They're going to have a great time here at Oklahoma State. For how long Cade Cunningham and Isaac likely are both together.
Let's talk about that for a minute here. Levi Peckinpah joining me on the Robert Allen and Friends Show. Patrick Wheeler with you all. Again, if you want to get in, you can. 533-1020, 533-1051. What he said with the whole, I'm thinking about myself when it comes to the NBA, but the thing that hit me was, I want to last in the NBA. Because we have seen that before, guys that are top prospects and hit the NBA maybe a little early than what some people would have thought, and even themselves, and they just don't pan out. I mean, I've said it for years, okay? I've religiously been a North Carolina basketball fan since I was a little kid, okay? And they have fantastic players year in and year out that just can't make it. It's crazy. They just can't make it in the NBA. Like, they dominate college basketball and just can't do it. But so I've seen it firsthand plenty. Now, someone like Cade Cunningham, he says, well, maybe it's a year. And I think he even actually said, hopefully it's only a year. He kind of said that. And that wasn't a surprise, but then he goes on to say, look, but if it's 3 or 4, whatever it takes for me to make sure I'm right with everything and right to be there and stay in the NBA when I get there, not just be there for a little while, then so be it. So I think that raised some eyebrows. I don't know what you thought initially when you saw those comments. I still said, look, he's going to be here a year. I'm going to back that up the entire way. But I also said he shocked me before by sticking around with Oklahoma State, okay? Because I didn't think he was going to.
Yeah.
So what did you think about those comments?
I thought that was really interesting because it showed that he at least knows both what he can do on the court, but also some of his own limitations. He realizes he's human.
Believe it or not.
Yeah, believe it or not. Well, some people always love to put a lot of these athletes up on a pedestal. I mean, you could look at Zion Williamson, the guy who knew he was the number one guy, and it seemed like he was treated like a god half of where he went. But a guy like Cade Cunningham has realized, yes, I am very good at basketball, but I know I have my own weaknesses. And somewhere at Oklahoma State, at a place like this where he's going to be going up against competition that most likely a lot of these guys you'll probably be seen on an NBA roster somewhere, he realized if he goes up against them, maybe I might find some things in my game that I know with Mike Boynton and the staff I can continuously improve on. And so maybe there's some stuff in his game that he just, as the season goes on, he realizes I feel like I could get better here at Oklahoma State and learn some more of those things with Mike Boynton, with the staff here, with the players here. And so maybe he stays another year or two, because there's been some players where there's been all this hype and they stay a couple more years, they get some more talent, and then they go on and have success. Marcus Smart is that name that you think of when things go on. But there's also some of these guys, when you stay here a little bit and when you go to the league, sometimes there's just not a spot for you, and there's just part of your games that just don't translate well over to the NBA. Unfortunately, LeBron Nash is one of those guys. He has gotten a spot in the NBA before, but it wasn't for a good chunk of time. But hopefully with what Cade has, and we know sky's the limit with him, and he's got a lot of talent. Hopefully he can continuously improve while he's here at Oklahoma State. We'd love it for him to be here multiple years, but if it's 1 year, I'm just still excited that he's even here for this 1 year.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's why I said, enjoy it while you can and soak in every moment. That's why if there was ever a time we needed a full, uninterrupted basketball season, it's now for Oklahoma State.
Who I would love to be in GIA for whenever Cade's there. That would be the moment of my time here at Oklahoma State, just being to be in there, especially like during Bedlam or during the Kansas games.
Yeah,
those arenas are already packed, but with Cade there, the energy is going to go up by like 5, so it's going to be fun.
It's what I said was earlier. This is a season and a school year that's going to be different, as you know. But a guy like Cade Cunningham, who on this campus would be, I've said it, I've said it before, a superstar, okay? And that's people around the country, players around the country that are like him, that have the name already, that are touted as top talents in any sport. Like, they are like professional superstars on campuses. It's going to be a strange year, I think, for Cade, obviously. Maybe not all that comes with what he thought would come with a season here at Oklahoma State, or any campus for that matter. But at the same time, the allure of him being here and the fans that it could draw. Okay, when you could, it's just like the people that were at Duke last year, and they said I got to see Zion Williamson play, and look at him now. I mean, for crying out loud, he's on the 2K cover. And so it's maybe going to be that situation where you're like, this, regardless of what Oklahoma State does, I might be witnessing the next NBA superstar. Right?
Yeah, it's the big opportunity that honestly not a lot of kids on campus might ever get a chance to ever see again.
Yeah,
that's how it is almost everywhere. Whenever you get the top touted talent that's going to be in the NBA, and it comes to your campus, you just kind of in awe, because you never thought that opportunity was ever going to happen to your college, and now it's here, and now all you can be is kind of starstruck, because this is, again, a once in a lifetime opportunity for the university and for a lot of kids. Hopefully it maybe happens again where another top tier talent, maybe Mike Boynton, just continues to knock it out of the park, and you get another talent to come in like Cade Cunningham. But if not, this is again a once in a lifetime opportunity for a lot of people to see a high caliber star of this caliber to come in and be able to hopefully take over the Big 12. But then again, the Big 12 again is a fierce conference that, if not prepared for properly, might chew up Cade Cunningham. But I think he'll have a good time there at the Big 12. It'll be fun to watch it.
Yeah, no, I think so too. It was interesting listening to Aaron there. One of the things he talked about, which when he had Mike Boynton on his podcast, was that story with Isaac Likely. He wanted to come out and say that day when the sanctions were handed down, he wanted to say that day, look, I want to announce that I'm staying with Oklahoma State. And Boynton said, dude, take some time. Like, think about this for a second. What kind of coach does that? Right?
I think that's a good coach, because and you say, why would you think that? Wouldn't you want to just like satisfy everything and just end everything right now? But that also allows a player to actually, again, be a human, weigh out his own like conflict of weigh out his own interest to see if it's the right direction that he wants to go. Because again, you could be that could be a little selfish if you just want to say, no, do it now, announce it now. But that allows him to just be himself and figure out what exactly he wants to do in life. And that's kind of what a good coach should do, is allow a person to be a person and have their own thought process, and being able to just survey the situation, take the best outlet for them, and then let them move, instead of wanting to act on instinct automatically. When you act on instinct half the time, sometimes that's where you get either your best moves or you get your worst move. True. And so letting someone to think it out and just be able to make up their own process and figure out what's their own right and wrong, I applaud that from Mike Boynton.
Well, I think that it's hard to do as a coach, okay, because his job is on the line.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, during all of this. So if he had said, like, yeah, there would have been an understanding that this probably was obviously not deserved to happen right now for this team. But at the same time, if everyone had jumped ship, then that leaves you with what exactly are you going to do as Mike Boynton as a team? Who do I get these lower tier players coming in all of a sudden that had nowhere else to go?
Yeah.
Just saying that it could have been disastrous.
Oh, yeah, it could have been terrible, and you would have left Mike Boynton, again, another year with a scrapped-together roster, which has been several years of Mike Boynton's tenure here at Oklahoma State, but every year that he's had a kind of like scrapped-together roster, he's at least been able to put together and show the body of work that he wants to bring here to Oklahoma State. You've at least seen the effort that he's been wanting to put in with these guys, whether it's been the guys that he's truly wanted here, some of the guys that just with a scrapped-together roster that are left, he's been able to put together so many great games where you've just seen what he's been able to do and see what he's wanting to do here at Oklahoma State into the future. And Isaac Likely has been kind of the guy that's been the focus for Mike Boynton. Whenever you talk about a guy who's been through it all and seen it all, Isaac Likely has been that guy. And I think now, just like Mike Boynton, with all the talent coming in, he's finally going to get to show what he's able to do. The same's going to be said for Isaac Likely, because now there's not going to be anything looming on him, anything on his shoulders. It's going to be, the only pressure is now you finally have to make the NCAA tournament. That's the true only pressure for Mike Boynton, Isaac Likely, and this Oklahoma State team.
No, that's true. It is. It's like you said, a proving year, I think, as well. And if he can balance out the, hey, look, I got a shiny new toy in Cade Cunningham, but I've also got my old reliable back here in Isaac Likely, then that's when you're going to see success follow. It was interesting, too. They actually floated the question. It was inevitable. I guess it was going to happen at some point. Hey, Cade, LeBron or Michael Jordan? They actually asked him that. He went with LeBron. He said that, he said that, and this was interesting. I liked his answer, though, because I had felt this way before at times, too. That in his time growing up, and mine as well, yours, LeBron was the Michael Jordan.
Yeah,
like we were able to see him and actually watch him play and witness everything that happened. So that's why he went with it, he said. But at the same time, he said he wouldn't argue anyone who said Michael Jordan, which I think after the documentary and everything too, it even pushed me that much more forward with Michael Jordan being the greatest to ever do it. But it was kind of a unique answer, because he's like, hey, a lot of it is based off just being able to watch, because how much really the time that we've grown up, it's been able to view a basketball game whenever we want.
Right.
Especially now, you can basically it's hard to miss out on a sport.
Right.
A game. We see LeBron everywhere. I mean, ESPN devoted their network to him basically too. So when that happens, it's easy to sway. Wasn't that kind of a unique answer, you think, by him?
That is quite a unique answer, and I don't blame him for that answer.
I really
because
don't.
Whenever you look at it for half of what's going to be part of our generations, a lot of them are going to go LeBron, and that's precisely why a lot of people choose him as the GOAT, is they have seen LeBron in action when no one's been able to see MJ. I mean, with me, I'm 21, and whenever I was born at the end of MJ's legacy, so I never got a chance to see any of it.
Sure.
But I've gotten a chance to see LeBron James hundreds of times. So I can understand why a lot of people go with LeBron James, because, again, he is the MJ of our generation, just like some people would also like to put Kobe Bryant in that situation because they got a chance to see Kobe. We haven't gotten a chance to see MJ. A lot of us, again, the Bulls Dynasty documentary was phenomenal.
Oh, yeah.
So that's where a lot of people have maybe been able to see that. I'm one of those guys that's an NBA fanatic, so I've gone back and watched a lot of Bull stuff, so that's why I'm an MJ guy.
Sure.
But a lot of people go with LeBron James, and sometimes it's those crazy LeBron fanatics who are just going to stand by him to the death of themselves. But I can respect those that at least back it, that they go with LeBron because, again, he is the MJ of this generation, because I think they are right.
Yeah, that's where you've mentioned it. That's where I lose brain cells with some of these guys that are like, look, it's LeBron till I die, and you ask them why, and it's like, because it's LeBron, man. You just have these guys, that's for every athlete, but my God, LeBron it's about as bad as anybody. Plus, I said it when I watched the documentary, I just respect Michael Jordan more. I mean, I get the time was different, but there are a lot of NBA players that would not have survived that time, okay?
Oh, yeah.
There just isn't. And Michael Jordan also, I think, really, here's the thing. I think that he helped solidify his career and his legacy by not being as outspoken as some people wanted him to be. Okay, there's going to be people that argue against it like they did in the documentary. He should have come out for this, should have said something for this. But look at the success that followed by him not making himself so public and having an opinion on every single issue, especially politically, like LeBron does.
Right.
Now, I know social media not being there also probably helped and played a big part of it. But I respect Michael Jordan for being one of those guys, like, if I don't have the knowledge or don't feel like I need to respond, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, because in today's modern media, you have to respond to everything.
Yeah.
You have to be on social media. You have to have either the right thing or you're going to get scrutinized half the time. So I respect MJ for being able to say, hey, I don't know what I don't know, so I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to be me, and I'm going to be me on the court. The only thing that I really loved from the documentary is I felt like the documentary was basically, for half of it, respect Scottie Pippen. Respect what Scottie Pippen has been able to do with this team and how he was able to be one of the biggest parts and one of the reasons why MJ was MJ. That's how I've always thought about it, is without Scottie Pippen, MJ's not MJ, just the same without MJ, Scottie Pippen is not Scottie Pippen. Scottie Pippen is one of the best small forwards of all time.
Oh, yeah.
And this was kind of the respect Scottie Pippen and make sure you always leave the respect on Scottie Pippen's name.
I love that, too. I that was one of the things I took away from the very beginning. The first few episodes was like, getting to even see some more Scottie Pippen highlights. Like, this dude was insanely athletic, and I see why they talked about him being the number 2 player in the league. He was right there with Jordan at times and on the same team. But I think what happened was, too, people that watched that team growing up, they probably liked the whole respect Scottie Pippen thing, but then there came that episode where he's like, they talked about when he didn't go back in the game. He sat down on his team. He said, well, if I had to go back, I'd do the same thing. I think that honestly was like a gut punch, though, to some Chicago Bulls fans, lifetime fans. Could you imagine, your favorite team, and till this day they're like, no, I wouldn't change it. Well, and the thing is, too, with Scottie and everything like that is, he said he comes out and didn't really like how he was portrayed. But that's going to be the case in any documentary. I think the only thing was, like I just mentioned, that issue. Other than that, I thought he was the co-star, right?
Yeah, but the thing for that documentary is there's been a lot of people that have came out and said that they don't like how they're portrayed. But here's the thing. Michael Jordan, he's going to say how this is going to go.
He basically directed this thing.
Yeah, this is, even though this is a Bulls documentary, it's a Michael Jordan documentary. I mean, half the episodes, they'd be talking about the season. It's like, oh, let's go take a look at MJ's life.
Yeah.
It's going to be about Michael Jordan, the guy who, again, is proclaimed to be the greatest of all time by the majority of people. So this is going to be a Michael Jordan documentary, even though we'd love to see and hear from a whole bunch of different people. This is Michael Jordan, and he is going to tell you how this story, at least in his eyes, in his light, how it should be portrayed. Even though this, to me, a lot of it was a lot more about how Scottie Pippen, in all honesty, in a lot of ways, was not treated very well by the Chicago Bulls franchise.
For sure.
That's why I don't blame him one bit for being the way he was. I probably would have been the same way if I was in his shoes, because it seemed like at every time he was doing something great for the Bulls, there was some kind of shortcoming that the Bulls were going to continuously push in his face and say, sorry, man, can't do anything for you. It's like, no, you could. You could definitely do something for me. So I don't blame Scottie Pippen one bit for feeling this way, but he's going to be betrayed the way Michael Jordan wants you to be betrayed.
Yeah, I think one of the issues was him knowing how good he was, and just so happens to be on the same team with the greatest player to ever play. Okay,
yeah,
the greatest player to ever play the game of basketball. He just so happens to be on that team. If he was on which we saw him at one point, but if he was at the height of his career on a different team, how would things have shaken out? Would we be talking about, was it Michael Jordan or Scottie Pippen? So it just so happened, but it did obviously work out in the long run.
Yeah, it's going to be like in a couple of years whenever LeBron's retired, there's going to be documentaries about him, and it's like, oh, there's going to be talk about Kyrie Irving, Kevin Love, Anthony Davis. It's the LeBron James documentary. Stop with your nonsense.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good way to put it, because it is going to be through his eyes, and we all know that's coming. I can't wait personally for the Kobe Bryant one they talked about. That's going to be great.
Oh yeah, that's going to be great. I can't wait for that one. And I think there's going to be, for some reason, I've heard there's going to be a Magic Johnson one somewhere.
Okay. Yeah.
I thought I've heard that rumor somewhere, but I know that there's definitely going to be a Kobe one. I'm pretty sure it's over his last season.
Yeah, they kind of did the same thing with the MJ thing. They allowed the documentary crew to basically film everything,
right?
Which I can't wait for, because again, that's also a player you and I got to see plenty of.
Oh yeah, there's going to be a lot of tears when that documentary comes out.
Yeah, that's going to be plenty emotional, no doubt.
Oh, it's going to be especially emotional when Pau Gasol hits there, because even out of all of his teammates, I think Pau Gasol, even though a lot of people are going to go to Shaq, of course, because the three-peat they had there, I think Pau was one of his best.
Yeah, you saw that picture that recently of him with Kobe's kids.
Oh,
man, that was tearjerker, wasn't it?
That was just a little bit. Just thinking about it now, just
right,
a
it's
little
tough,
bit.
Man. It is. It's I can't wait. It'll be extremely emotional, but it'll be powerful too.
Oh yeah.
When we come back, Stanford, yeah, they cut sports. I cannot believe that they actually had 36 sports to begin with, but they trimmed it down. We'll talk about what that means for possibly other schools. Later on, we'll get into much more. There was a new poll sent out by Stadium talking about they polled a bunch of ADs and said, we're going to have football. Are we going to have it on time? And there's a much different percentage than what was first given out a couple of months ago. We'll talk about all that still to come on the Robert Allen and Friends Show with Patrick Wheeler. Levi Peckinpah's in with me. Back after this. It's the Robert Allen and Friends Show, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler, Levi Peckinpah, I'm with you. As we continue, covering for Robert, get in on the action if you want. 533-1020, 533-1051. Hit our social media if you want as well. D-Patty Wheels, Twitter, Facebook, whatever. Send in your questions if you got them. Levi's on there as well. It's at Levi Peckinpah, right?
Yes, sir.
Right? Okay, I got it down. Just
don't forget to also follow the Triple Play Sports Radio.
Yeah, as well. Yeah, and we do that on Twitter too. I mentioned the Facebook page a bunch. Do that. Yeah, follow us on Twitter as well. We're actually nearing 1,000+ followers. That's great.
Hey, there you go.
Yeah, we've been. I think people have. This has also been one of those times where it's like, wow, has any other university in an off season had to cover, a station cover as much as we have with things going on like this?
For the good and the bad.
Yeah, exactly. This has been full of breaking news and new topics regarding Oklahoma State. So that's definitely something to keep up with as well. Here's something I brought up yesterday, and I'm glad I got you back in because you've already had firsthand experience, but I kind of went off on Harvard yesterday because they said, look, all classes are going to be online, but on top of that, we're going to sit here and still charge students $49,000 a year to come in and sit in front of a computer screen. Okay? Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, wow, that is robbery, I think. Yeah. I mean, and the reason why, we all know they're going to still be able to charge this because their name is Harvard.
Yeah.
But first of all, the question for you would be, if Oklahoma State does it and they say all online, and let's say you're coming out of state, okay, so tuition is like $25,000 a year. Mm-hmm. Let's say they keep it at that. Would you still go through with it?
Oh, if it was out of state, no.
Okay.
No way.
Okay.
I would take the year off until I could go back in person, because in reality, I think Harvard can get away with it because it's Harvard.
Yeah, exactly.
Because think about it. Compared to a place like Oklahoma State or like Oklahoma or even smaller schools, the education there that they'll probably get online, heck, might even be better than what we'll probably be getting in person half the time. But the in-person experience compared to online is drastically different. And I hope everybody's listening. It is drastic.
Explain this to people, because I've done it my best and only been able to explain it so far because I've only had the occasional online class when I was in school. You have done it.
Right.
Okay? So tell them what the issue is here.
All right. Whenever I'm in a class, what they usually do is you can get all the information right there from that person, and usually getting the information from the person, taking down your notes, even though half the people hate taking down your notes, that's where you can get that information firsthand, and you can literally take it in right there, and usually getting that visual right there instead of having to take something online, it usually helps out a lot more than anybody would ever think. If all this stuff's online, that means you have to put in less and less effort to actually having to pay attention. Whenever I was in one of my classes, we would usually all get in there a couple minutes early, say our highs, and then we would sit there. And I know for the first couple weeks we were actually paying attention. We were trying to be there and be as much present as possible. After a couple weeks, we all realized after the presentation, everything is literally just going to be on our little website, wherever we get all of our information from. So sitting there and listening to the person jabber on for 20, 30 minutes became pointless, to the point where a lot of us were wasting our time, and even myself, where I like to pay attention and like to gather as much information, I can feel my hand reaching back after 15 minutes, just hitting the button on my Xbox and me going into somewhere else.
Yep.
Whenever it's online, you don't have to pay attention as much because you know where the information is going to be, and you're not going to, the majority of the time, try to soak up all the information. You're going to try to get it out of the way so you can go do stuff on your own time, because whenever it's all online, you're not there on school time anymore. You're there on your own time, and whenever you're there on your own time, you don't want to be doing schoolwork. You want to be doing anything but. So whenever it turns to you have to go to school and you're there, you get to see your friends, you get to be there in front of the teachers who half the time, whenever you're in a class, what you learn there, you learn more from their experiences that they like to share instead of just from the lessons. I mean, the lessons, of course, will give you great information, but especially for me in a journalism class, you're going to be getting more from the stories and the things that they've done instead of what's going to be on the next slide for your test. That you're not going to be remembering that, but you're going to be remembering the information that you're going to be gathering from a lot of these people that have had experience in what you're trying to go into.
Yeah, I remember the same thing. Going through journalism classes, it was like, not just that, but the hands-on. I mean, getting to actually to do things like you're going to do in the field. And I get that's the way for a lot of majors too. And what makes it, I think, even worse now is that for the online stuff, if it was on campus in the past, occasionally you'd get the professor that says, look, I'm not going to put my notes and slides online, so you're going to have to take them down yourself. Well, in this case, if that were to happen, people would freak out and be like, we can't even go to campus. We can't find our stuff. Well, do you think that the universities would be like, should have paid attention? Nah, I doubt it. Yeah. So, because they know that, and I think that this is going to become a real issue for some schools. We're going to be seeing a lot of kids do like what you said, just take a year off, they go do something else, and ultimately that could lead in not going back to school for some people.
Yeah.
Tuition's going to go down.
Yeah, because for a lot of students and for a lot of people in general, they're in that group where after they leave, they don't want to come back. They're going to go on and try to find the next thing that can help them out in life. So if it happens that they just don't come back because the money is so high, Oklahoma State is going to take a hit from that, and a lot of colleges are going to take a hit from that, and then some people in life will take hits. Yeah. It's just the unfortunate, I guess you could say, trickle-down effect of what the virus has done to a lot of people and a lot of universities.
Dude, it's crazy still when I saw the number that Harvard is still going to charge. I mean, when you put it into that's why I wanted you to put it into that perspective. It goes the same way for those kids. Yeah, they're crazy smart and they're taking it seriously, but they're still kids.
Yeah,
I mean, you're going to be distracted. It's just not the same. You should not be, in my opinion, have to pay the same tuition for an only online, even in an unprecedented time, an only online education. It is nuts.
Man, I'm just thinking almost $50,000 for online.
Yeah, exactly. Isn't that crazy when you think about that number?
Oh,
it's
man,
nuts.
That's an insane number. I can barely fathom that number. I can barely fathom what I have to pay here at Oklahoma
right.
State, and then you basically almost times 4. I'm just sitting there and I'm baffled.
I'm telling you, it is insane. I don't think that story has gotten enough attention just to how many people are going to be affected with that. This story was interesting yesterday. It happened after I was off the air. Didn't get a chance to talk about it. But as we've mentioned a little bit before, and we'll dive into it a bit more here, Stanford officially cutting some sports. 36 sports were sitting on Stanford's campus. These are the sports that were cut. Men's and women's fencing, field hockey, lightweight rowing, men's rowing, co-ed and women's sailing, squash, synchronized swimming, men's volleyball, and wrestling. Obviously, the big one is wrestling, and you said you thought maybe volleyball too for men's there. I actually was really shocked to see what sports were also. I knew Stanford had a lot of sports, but some of them I was like, what? Squash? I can't remember what squash exactly is, to be honest. I think I have an idea, but I'd have to look it up. Synchronized swimming was a sport. I can't believe it. So my first thing is, like, I feel bad for these individual student athletes. Like, that sucks. You wouldn't want what you've worked hard for to get to where you are taken away from you. But from a business standpoint, this is what has happened at some schools already with soccer. At some places with, I think even tennis there's been some issues and lost some programs. We've seen the occasional baseball program be cut at some schools. But when you have these sports, it's awful for those people. But I'm not going to act like going to sit here and be really surprised, right? With that number being so large, and then maybe being able to take those sports that we listed. Remember, that's 11 of the 36. There's a bunch more that weren't affected.
Yeah, and there's again some that we haven't seen, that if things continue to happen, maybe you see more from Stanford. But this could be something where you see a lot of colleges again trimming down some sports that, again, just by a business standpoint, just not a lot of profit, to the point to where you have no choice. And you hate to see that, because again, there's a lot of really, really great athletes in all of those little spots that won't get their full experience that they were wanting at at Stanford, or you see at other universities. And you hate to see that, because you always want to see these guys succeed, and to have these sports there, it's their best opportunity to succeed. But it's a business at the end of the day, and you hate saying that. We all hate saying that, because you want people to have their best opportunity to succeed. But whenever the big draws for the majority of colleges, it's football, it's basketball, and for Oklahoma State, it's wrestling. Whenever those places won't get the opportunity to draw in that money, unfortunate cuts have to happen. And for a place like Stanford to be doing those cuts, that could also maybe saying something in the future, where maybe the possibility of what's going to happen to college football, college basketball, maybe it might be a writing into the future.
It definitely could. I mean, I think that's fair to say. It's, you don't want to look at it that way, but yeah.
And you don't want to see this at a place like Oklahoma State, because think about it, the majority of our programs are pretty successful programs. Whether you look at football, basketball, wrestling, you can go to tennis, baseball, softball. You literally go down our list. It's success almost everywhere. You don't want to see any of those programs get cut. And I don't think it would happen this year. Maybe you get a couple years down the line if things with the pandemic don't get sorted out. But you don't want to see this happen anywhere. So hopefully things continue and hopefully start to de-escalate, and we can go back to a quote-unquote normal.
Yeah, I think we just have to remember, the number of sports that were there. That has a lot to do with it, because this is news because it's Power 5, but when you look at most of the other schools and the number of their sports, it's like we've talked about it before, that most Power 5 schools are probably going to be able to withstand all this that's happening. You're going to see the occasional cut on some smaller sports, but not like Stanford did.
Like the comparison, Houston trimmed the budgets of 17 of their programs.
Yeah.
17, not 36.
Right. Yeah. Trim the budgets too.
Yeah,
right.
Just a little trim.
Yeah. So there's a difference in some of these schools, but that's what happens when you get such a large number of athletics in a situation like this. Now, probably never planned for it, but this is what's going to happen. Let's just kind of hit the headlines here real quick. One of the other ones I mentioned earlier was the ACC has announced they're pushing their fall seasons back into September, except for football. So could you see maybe this happening in more Power 5 conferences that say, you know what, if we're going to be as cautious as possible, let's make sure football has their opportunity here and push all these other sports back a couple months.
I'm very surprised that football just wasn't with it. But that's something that I could see a lot of conferences doing, just to make sure that they can keep everybody as safe as possible. Because, again, like we were saying, football is one of those sports where it's the most profit. Because, again, you have a lot of deals with it with a lot of different companies that are trying to get that out there so that way they can get their viewing money from it. So, again, probably starting football where it is, you don't blame them. And with that happening, you want to keep everybody as safe as possible. So I don't blame the ACC for pushing it back just a little bit.
I don't either, and I think it could start a trend. There's been this whole time, it's like, who's going to be first at doing this and this and this? Well, the ACC jumped on it, and that's interesting because they were the last, I think, to actually switched their media days to only virtual. They were trying to hold on to something there, but they couldn't. So maybe the Big 12 follows, maybe the SEC. I don't know, but the Big 12 probably has a better chance than the SEC, I think, of doing it. But it's just the truth to some people now is like, look, in case you didn't realize, football is it, right?
Yeah,
that's the sport.
Just in case you didn't realize, with everything going on, football has to have its time.
We're gonna make sure it has its time and then try to have it untouched.
Yeah.
When we come back, I've got a question for you on an actual little bit of a betting question I want to throw your way that I saw was pretty interesting. And then I didn't get to talk about it yesterday, but the NBA is officially in their bubble. We saw pictures of what some of the rooms look like and what some of the food looks like. This is really unbelievable on some of the pictures we've seen. We got to talk about that. Still to come here to wrap up the Robert Allen and Friends show with Patrick Wheeler, Levi Peckinpah with me here on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Back after this. Welcome back to the Robert Allen and Friends show, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler and Levi Peckinpah with you. We're wrapping it up here on Thursday, so we continue to roll on. This is so I saw this betting line yesterday. Mm-hmm. I love to, especially now. I mean, betting on sports is fun, but especially now when there's nothing going on. Just like to look at future bets and that type of thing. So after the Mahomes deal, and I floated this question to a couple of guys I had on yesterday that were pretty directly involved with the Chiefs at some point. I said, and I saw it, and it said they had the future Patrick Mahomes Super Bowls, winning Super Bowls at the over-under was at 1.5. And I thought maybe that was a little low, but if it's sitting at 1.5, do you like the over or the under on that one?
I think I would like the over, and just by a little bit, because I think it would be like 2. I think it would be sitting at 2.
That's what a lot of people have said when they've said the over is that they think 2. Now I got to remember what state of mind I was in here when after they won the Super Bowl. I immediately said that's we're going to get 3 more. Mm-hmm. I said we're going to get 3 more.
You went on the LeBron thing, not 2, not 3,
exactly.
not 4.
Yeah, we're gonna get 6 more. What are you talking about? And I said we're gonna get 3 more. And I think I'll still sit by that even today. I know that's asking a ton, and I know too just how hard it is to win multiple Super Bowls. Mm-hmm. Look at the quarterbacks that have done it. I mean, and the ones that haven't. So I get it. But what's crazy to me is, and I wouldn't just to verify, I would take the over. But what's crazy to me is just like I had our guys on yesterday. Seth Kaiser told me, he's like, think about it. You saw the announcement that he got the money, got the contract, and what was the next thing you saw that was posted on social media? That dude was back putting in work in. Like he was the next day. Like you would think, he said most guys that would get that contract probably take a day off. No, he was back ready to go.
Back at it again. The dude's 24 and got paid millions and millions of dollars and has set himself and his family up and future generations for
forever.
life.
Forever. Hey,
forever.
His you could go down the line of his grandkids will be fine. Mm-hmm. And it's just that mentality that and he even say, I got more rings to collect. Obviously, you want to hear that. I got a chance to make something special happen here. I think the mindset plays into a ton. Mm-hmm. See, it could be easily a guy that goes out and says, "Look, I'm gonna use this for a bit. I'm gonna celebrate this." No, it's I have tunnel vision on this. Okay, it's Super Bowl or bust.
It's Tom Brady mode.
Yeah, it's
the thing you for an opposing guy. And hey, I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan. I hate to see that Patrick Mahomes is back in the gym. He's back looking to kick everybody's tail in.
Yeah.
And again, prove that himself and the Kansas City Chiefs are the best team in the world. Not for 1 year, but another year. And they're going to continuously do that because Patrick Mahomes, again, he got paid like a champion at age 24. And you know what? He is a champion now. He's a former MVP, and you pay your guy like that because he is at, again, age 24.
Yeah.
Just a couple years older than me and
he's my age.
He's your age.
Yeah.
He was the MVP and probably the best player in the league.
Yeah.
And that's crazy to think that you get paid like that, but from a Kansas City Chiefs standpoint, I would do it again in a heartbeat.
Oh yeah, I think that's why you get a lot of people saying, "Look, that was a no-brainer."
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it really was. It was funny. I asked my guy Art Haynes yesterday, who's part of the Chiefs radio network. I said, "Did you think the Chiefs would ever offer 10 years?" And he goes, "Yeah, to be honest, I really did." Mm-hmm. And I was like, "Wow, I think there was people within that organization that thought, yeah, I could see it happening."
Yeah, it was the case of the blank check. You write down any
right.
number, and we will pay that.
Pay it, yep.
Because think about it. With everything else, you can fill a lot of those other positions in with draft picks, and that's the one thing that's been helping the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, I'm excited to see Clyde Edwards-Helaire and how he's going to fit in because I think he is a Kansas City running back, and I think that's a perfect fit in right with Williams, and it's just, again, fitting right into the system. Say you have to drop off somebody else with a contract because, hey, some of these guys, they're just performing way too well, and they're going to go get paid somewhere else. Say if something happens with Chris Jones, which I think y'all will eventually end up re-signing him.
I think so.
But say something happens with him, say he goes somewhere else. You fit in another draft pick, you get another great player there, or say you do a Golden State Warriors, you get a veteran and you fit him in there and he works his way well right there. I mean, it's easy to plug and play pieces, and just even get to the playoffs is usually hard for a lot of teams. But when you got a guy like Patrick Mahomes there as your captain, you're guaranteeing a lot of success to happen for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, see, that's what I love is the initial response from people that continue to hate is they just bought this team. Like, dude, they built this team. Okay, it was years of hard work, but Brett Veach seeing Patrick Mahomes when he was a sophomore in college and saying that's our guy then, and then going on out on a limb saying he's the best player I've ever seen. Like, he looks like a genius now. So they drafted Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill. They went through and they got McCole Hardman last year. They grabbed Kareem Hunt back when he was good in the third round, for crying out loud. These players have just panned out, and so I think that the front office, in the Chiefs front office, a lot of us trust now, which is important. But yeah, I like that. That was an interesting bet. Betting line of 1.5. I would definitely take the over if you were going to put money on, which you definitely can now. So let's see. One of the other. So the NBA. Okay, I see they finally get in. As you say, you're a big NBA guy. They finally get in the bubble. That's been the talk of, what's going to be with how's the bubble going to work? Is it actually going to be something that can pan out? Yeah. I said for a while now, at this time, it doesn't make as much sense as it did months ago because we already saw, for instance, the Major League Soccer, they're doing the same thing.
Right. And
they already had a team that had to back out because they had coronavirus test positive. But they came in with it. But the thing to me is, we got to remember these Disney employees are able to go in and out of this bubble.
Right.
So at some point, to me, it's going to get punctured, which I'm like, okay, well, what are we doing this for? So anyways, but it's happening. What was funny, what was kind of interesting and went viral, obviously, was the picture posted on social media of the first meal that was given to these guys when they arrived. Now, we have to remember, like you said to me over the, that these guys are split up into different hotels. Okay.
Yeah, they're sorted by you're going to most likely make the NBA Finals. You might, and you definitely aren't.
Wow, that's it's what's funny is that's happening at Disney World. It's like, you get the idea it's the most magical place in the world. Everybody's going to be treated like a king. Well, okay, hold on.
When you wish upon a star,
exactly,
you get ratings and you will not.
That's so true. I love it. Okay, so Chris Chiozza, okay? People probably don't know who he is. A lot of people. Plays for the Nets, right? Isn't that right?
Yeah, Brooklyn Nets.
Plays for Brooklyn. So he puts this picture of his food on. I think it was Instagram, and he so this is interesting. You got to see this picture to really understand. But so what I'm seeing is, in the first tray, there's this spinach, I think is what that is, and then behind it, there's just these like red cubes. Okay, it's either watermelon, some type of carrot, or a tomato or something there.
That's got to be one big tomato.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm like, I don't know what it is. There's a bowl of noodles that are just like noodles. There's no sauce on them. The next plate is mashed potatoes, a piece of chicken grilled, or looks like something there, maybe baked, and I don't know what that little black piece is behind it, but there's a bunch of little side condiments. So basically, I've seen a lot of people compare it to airplane food. It was pretty funny because I'm like, you know what? Guy with like the Brooklyn Nets is there. He's probably in a, we saw a pretty average hotel room, and then this is what they're getting. So it kind of shocked me a little bit because I was expecting this whole steak and potatoes dinner every night type of deal for all these
the Disney treatment.
Yeah, exactly. Which, as we said, and the first comment I saw on the picture was, guys, LeBron's not eating this, right?
LeBron's not. I hope Jamal Crawford doesn't have to eat this because he got signed by the Brooklyn Nets.
Yes, he did.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, last night, right? Officially?
Oh, yeah. Last night, officially, he's going to get himself the final little farewell tour.
Yep.
Or I hope what this is the farewell, I'm going to be back in the league next year on a deal. That's what I hope this is. I hope he works himself into another deal.
It could happen. I could see it.
I mean, because think about it. A guy his age, his last game in the league for the Phoenix Suns, again, this is the Phoenix Suns, you can also take it with a pinch of salt, he scored 50.
Yeah.
He was able to put up buckets on the Phoenix Suns and still get 50. The dude has games still.
Oh, yeah.
He can still go out there and ball. It's like Vince Carter. He's still got game. It's just whether or not he wants to play or not.
Yeah, exactly. I'm excited for him. I love Jamal. What did you think of the picture when you saw that? Were you like, were you like, hey, I'm actually eating better right now here where I am? Yeah, that's what I thought.
I was sitting there. I was trying to get to go, and I was like, man, my to go order sounds better than what they're eating there. It feels wrong because these guys are at the level that they're playing at. They're literally playing for ratings at this point.
Yeah.
Because I think the NBA Finals, with how it's going, has the asterisks on it. Because I mean, with the Brooklyn Nets, half of their players are out, whether whether it's to injury or the virus. I mean, they're basically just a shell of a team. Same with the Washington Wizards because Bradley Beal's not playing.
True.
Same with the Pacers because Victor Oladipo's not playing. It's a lot of these teams that are just shells. I can understand now why the West is 13 teams deep because the East, they just lost 3.
I think it's fair to look at it this way, too, because, as I've said, and it's public knowledge, I mean, NBA rankings have tanked over the last few years. So people aren't as interested anymore. The finals, though, are still what people care about, okay?
Oh, yeah.
So for now, I think what's going to happen is you're going to see initially it's like, okay, basketball's back. So the ratings are going to go up because we haven't seen basketball in a long time. But how long until it's just like, okay, this is great, you know? It only can go so long. We've seen people just say, hey, throw the Bucks and the Lakers and let's get it in and let's get it done.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, does this in your mind? Does the whole bubble thing go off with some success, or
it might be successful for the first couple of weeks, but honestly, I would have just started with the playoffs, man. That would have made things so much easier. Maybe give them a couple games instead of the 8, because the 8, it's going to eventually, all this stuff's going to the amazement of, oh, this is in Disneyland. We get to see our teams finally. That's eventually going to wear off, and then you're going to have to deal with the fact that these guys are in a situation that honestly is a lot worse off than some of these other ones, because now the situation where there might be Disney staff that comes in and they might have health issues and they're trying to serve these guys. And again, you're also still with players because coronavirus sometimes can still pop up when you don't expect it. Maybe one of these players end up getting it during this whole thing and contaminates everybody else. It's a bad scenario that could get a lot worse.
Yeah, no, that's the perfect way to put it. I've said that the whole time, and I mean, let's be honest. What I would like to see is they get into closer to the finals time, and they are able to go back to home arenas. I think like they can travel. I mean, we can do private planes and get to where we need to go. It's just like we've said over and over. Same with college players. It's going to depend on the discipline of these guys. Yeah, you know, it really is. Like, are they going to be able to discipline themselves enough to be like, hey, I want to get this done. That means me having to make some sacrifices, right?
Right. Will LeBron be able to do his Taco Tuesday videos and someone brings in the tacos so he doesn't have to go out?
LeBron's going to get what he wants.
Oh, yeah. It's King James.
Yeah, it is. I tell you what, since we're done here, I'm about to go get lunch. It's going to be better than the NBA.
Yes, sir.
Food. Levi, thanks so much, man, for hanging out with me. I appreciate it, as always.
Love doing it, man. Love doing it.
It's Levi Peckinpah there. A big thank you to Tom Ackerman joining me in the early part of our first hour, and then Aaron Torres as well joining me. Tomorrow, you do not want to miss when I'm back on Robert Allen and Friends. To start the show, I will have Jason Whitlock with me. This dude he's a superstar, media superstar. Used to be on Speak For Yourself on Fox Sports. Now he's was with ESPN. Now he's with Outkick.com. He's fantastic. He will be on at 10 o'clock right when we start tomorrow, and it's only going to be about 10 to 15 minutes, so be sure to tune in to what he has to say.
That's going to be a banger right there.
Have you heard of Jason Whitlock?
Oh, yeah. Jason, that's going to be a banger.
Oh, he's awesome.
That's great.
I cannot wait to talk to him, and that's going to be the most. I'm going to pack in as much in 10 minutes as I can with him.
Oh, yeah. That's going to be great.
So he'll be on with us tomorrow. Make sure you don't miss it. That's Levi Peckinpah. I'm Patrick Wheeler. This has been the Robert Allen and Friends Show. Thanks for tuning in. TV 31 at 1 is next. Afternoon Sports Drive is at 3 o'clock, so make sure you don't miss it. Also to come on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network.